Good afternoon, everyone. It is 1 o'clock and time to call the City of Franklin Budget and Finance Committee meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is approval of minutes from the January the 10th meeting. Hope everyone's had a chance to look at those. Any corrections, deletions, additions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Proper motion is second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. The second and third items on the agenda are related, and I'm gonna let Christine talk about item consideration of draft resolution 2019-12 and initial resolution authorizing the city to issue general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $34,500,000. And item 2 is consideration of draft resolution 2019-13 and the resolution to issue general obligation improvement and refunding bonds in an amount not to exceed $61,500,000. You're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These two resolutions are related, and I wanted to walk you through those together. We had talked with this committee back last August about plans for the early part of 2019 for the issuance of what we call new money bonds, which are bonds to fund new projects. They are approved projects, but ongoing capital projects for the city. And then we also discussed an opportunity related to refinancing the 2009 Build America bonds, which were issued 10 years ago. And there's an opportunity to refinance those. And there's a benefit to going ahead to proposing to do that transaction at the same time. And so wanted to walk through that what these two resolutions represent, because certainly they have different face amounts on them, but to walk through them separately. Resolution 2019-12 is entitled an initial resolution, and that's a requirement in the state of Tennessee that if a government's going to issue general obligation bonds for new projects, not refinancings, but for new debt, to have an advertisement period for that debt. And an initial resolution then only applies to new debt for new projects. And so the $34.5 million does not apply toward the refinancing of the Build America bonds. The $34.5 million, wanted to walk through with these projects that we've identified for this next bond issue. You'll recall that back last November, I believe it was, the board approved what was called an intent resolution, which was actually for $41 million, which set a not to exceed amount for the 2019 bond issue. And this is coming back to you and saying that we are requesting to issue $34.5 million of funds toward new projects. And most of these projects we've talked about in some form during the either the capital improvement program update, or as you've also heard staff give updates on these existing projects. And I will also give the information that these are funds that must be spent within 3 years of the closing of bonds. That's an IRS requirement for tax-exempt debt. So we are proposing a schedule, which I'll talk about in just a moment, in which these bonds would be closed in early May of 2019. And those funds, these projects would need to be, these funds would be expended by early May of 2022. So that sets the clock once those bonds close. The largest dollar amount project in this bond issue is the Franklin Streetscape project. That's $15.3 million. That is to finish the project during that time period. And
the Franklin Road project. Yeah.
yes, the Franklin, and
I would remove the word streetscape. It's
the Franklin
a
Road.
yeah, Franklin Road.
But the Franklin Road.
Yeah, well, I just Franklin Road.
I will update that for the next time we show this. But
And
the
so
Franklin.
excuse me, where
Yes.
is this in our materials?
Lene, I believe it was added to the item.
Yes, can you refresh it?
Yeah, item 3.
I just tried to, and
Summary.
Yes.
that's
The
what,
bottom left.
There's a
I
one.
just did it.
There
but
is
maybe
a-
right
At the
there.
very end of item
No.
3.
Oh, it doesn't look like that. Maybe that's the thing.
Well, there's
It just
also
doesn't look
one,
like-
there's also an attachment to the item when it was published, and this just makes it look a little
I
more, screen friendly.
Let me push it out once more.
Okay. Summary. Okay. Wait a minute. I thought I just redid mine, but,
I'm pushing it out again, I'm refreshing it.
okay. See? Okay, thank you.
Got it?
Very good,
You
thank
good?
you.
Yeah, it did this time. I mean, what I mean is I refreshed it whenever I came in, but couldn't get to it.
So the Franklin Road project, the 15.3 million, and this will be to complete that project in the 3 years following the issuance of the bonds. The next project, which I have combined for the sake of putting this on one page here, we do have McEwen Phase 4, which is 8.7 million. And then we have one aspect of McEwen Phase 5, which is 1.25 million. And of course, the McEwen 4 and 5 will not be completely finished during that 3-year period. But this is, from McEwen 4, the $8.7 million will get, in consulting with the engineering staff, we'll get the first couple of years of that period. Certainly, there will be a construction award in the second year of that 3-year period, and we will know much more the timing of the remainder of the cash flows for that project.
They're also looking at what is eligible for the federal dollars, and that'll be more on the back end of the project, which is more the straight construction. There'll be some right-of-way and utility costs associated with this first component, and so we'll be able to get more of the grant back, or it's a reimbursement when we issue bonds, probably in 2021. So you'll see the second part then, and be able to finish the project up there.
But phase 5 might not even occur in that 3 years.
Yeah, and this element of 5 is on a specific component. There's a major gas transmission line
Okay.
in the path of that project, and we expect that's going to take some time to go through the process and bureaucracy needed to move that line. And so we've talked with Brentwood on that. This would be our half, they would pay the other half to work with relocating that line now, because we've got final design done for McEwen 5. So in the next couple years, get that relocated so that when it's time to build it, we don't have to wait for that component to be adjusted. So we're trying to get in front of, because we have to deliver that road in 24 months once Brentwood has funded their half. So we just want to have that out of the way so we can move forward with construction.
The next project is major road resurfacing. As you recall, there's $4.1 million of major road resurfacing in the 2017 bond issue. And in fact, there will be more paving work we'll call it the paving year of 2019, which goes from toward end of March until the end of October is what the paving year in Middle Tennessee looks like. So the funds for the 2019 paving year have already been bonded for, and we'll be expensing from the 17 bond issue. This is major road resurfacing that the Streets Department has requested for paving year 2020 and 2021. And so as fiscal years go, that does go into fiscal 22, but they do have plans and their requests to do some more major road resurfacing that extends life on these major roads. And these are the project that you'll see them working on this year is a pretty involved project that will certainly to people who are out and about in the Cool Springs area will look and feel like a major project.
So this is something we identified when we did Invest Franklin a few years ago. These are local roads, local responsibility, but they're arterials. They're things like Cool Springs, Mallory, Liberty, yeah, those types of roads that fall in our responsibility but are heavily traveled, heavily used. And so over a multi-year period, we wanted to systematically address those from a repaving standpoint.
The 2.36 million for fire apparatus represents two pieces of fire apparatus. These are pieces of equipment that have 20-year lives in service. We do amortize those over 15 years, but they do have long life. They are very expensive, as you can see by the amounts. We do have a piece that's already on order here in fiscal year 2019. That was in the 2019 budget. And this anticipates another piece in the 2020 budget. And as you will also recall that these have quite a while of an order period. They're custom made for the most part. So we do order these and receive them 9 to 12 months later. These are significant investments in equipment. The next item is we do have $2 million for police vehicles. This is the shortest amortization of this entire bond issue. It's a four-year amortization. This was actually part of the 2019 budget. This was to help catch up. There was a need to catch up in replacement of police vehicles, and these vehicles have been ordered. Many of these have already arrived. We ordered those in July. I think the last report I saw, it had about half of them already arrive in, and the resolution from November allows us to be reimbursed with bond proceeds for these vehicles which have started to arrive and are being rotated, into service. But this request does not have any additional bonding for police vehicles. This was to help us in 2019, help catch up, and certainly you're going to be hearing just in a few moments from Chief Faulkner and her requests for vehicles for 2020, and but at this point we are going to make every attempt to fund police vehicle replacement with cash. We used to have the ability to do some leasing programs. That's not available, but we certainly wanted to do we recommended doing a catch-up year like this, but that's not something we're looking to propose for 2020.
You'll see us build in sort of a base amount that is what we would expect to replace on a regular basis. And when we talk about the police-based budget, we'll be able to identify that for you. I think it's around $1.25 million, something like that we're looking to have as a base amount for replacement on an ongoing basis.
We did 30, didn't we not?
We did quite a few, yeah. So we needed to catch up, and I think we're getting closer to the point that we can manage it more through the base budget that you'll see.
The next project is a sanitation facility. This is the same project in which we had $1.5 million of funds in the 2017 bond issue. This began as a project primarily for looking at paving, and we knew there were some drainage concerns out at the sanitation facility. As the description of the facility you would expect, very heavy trucks going in and out of that facility is very hard on the paving. Engineering department has done studies of the drainage and the paving out at the facility, and there's a recommendation that there needs to be more work done than that $1.5 million could get done. And it does have to be staged so that we can not have to replace it. We won't be paving where we're going to be doing drainage improvements out there, so that's being planned. There is a request for about another $1.6 million to do that work. We would of course spend the rest of the $1.5 million first, and then spend the $1.6 million to get the drainage and the paving out at the sanitation facility where in an improved condition to extend the life of that facility. And then finally, these are estimated cost of issuance for a bond issue. We will certainly make that the actual amount as we get closer. So that's how we come up with a bond request of 30.5 $34.5 million. At this time, as we amortize these pieces, we actually have an average life of just over 10 years. A final maturity is 20 years out, but we have an average life of 10.693 years, primarily because we are amortizing parts of this shorter than 20 years. And then even our 20-year piece, which are the road projects, that is a level debt service. So we're certainly paying principal throughout the entire life of the issue. Where interest rates were last week, the interest rates would be just over 3%, 3.04% on the new money piece of the bond issue. We will continue to, of course, track interest rates. We have seen the last couple years some increases in Fed funds rates, but that pace has certainly not accelerated, and so we'll continue to follow. But certainly, as of last week, right around a 3% interest rate. The 2019 B series is completely related to the refinancing of the 2009 Build America bonds, BABs for short. That would be refunding a par amount of $27 million. That maintains the final maturity of those bond issue, which is 2029. So we would have 10 more years. There is principal in every year. And one document that we uploaded just in the last couple of hours is that in Tennessee, the Comptroller's Office have a review of all refinancings, and they just issued their approval of our plan today. And so we have attached that to your Granicus file. We had filed for that review. We just received approval of this plan of refunding. When we talked to you back last August, we did anticipate there would be debt service savings from doing this refinancing, and that has continued to be what we're seeing with market rates. There would be about $200,000 a year of interest savings from affecting this refinancing, and that's after taking into account costs of issuing these bonds. And part of that is also that there is a factor of savings by doing this together. We're not having to hire attorneys and do two sets of documents. It's actually one large set of documents. So there's some efficiencies to doing this together. So there is sufficient savings. There's also reduction of risk because this 2009 Build America bonds were actually taxable debt, which we received a subsidy from the federal government to effective ourselves with tax-exempt rates. And so we are refinancing with bonds that are very plain vanilla tax-exempt underneath the City of Franklin name. We won't have to have any concern that the federal government will pay us that subsidy either on time or will they change the subsidy for 10 more years. So we are reducing our risk by refinancing into a very simple type of debt instrument.
Just one question. Did you say
Yes, ma'am.
these are going to extend for 10 more years? Would that be to 2039?
No, on the Build America bonds, the final maturity is 2029, and we'll be maintaining 2029
be
as the final
10
years
maturity.
from now. 10 more
Maintain.
years.
Oh,
Yes,
good,
ma'am.
good.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
good,
it's
good.
the same maturity schedule as the bonds were
Good.
issued.
So the combination of the savings that Christine talked about, plus eliminating the risk that the federal government could change their program or the way in which they're granting this rebate, essentially, seems like the appropriate thing to do. Lock it in, know what we're going to deal with for the next 10 years, save a little bit of money, and also eliminate the risk that makes this savings even more beneficial, potentially.
Very
And
good.
the average life of the 2019 Bs is 5.6 years. The final maturity is 10 years from now, but the average life is 5.6 years because we will be paying principal every year throughout those 10 years. The true interest, interest rate for last week was 2.1% on that second piece. And the original bonds were issued at a taxable rate of just over 5%. So we do have a subsidy, which we won't be receiving anymore. But when you compare that net effective rate of the 09 Bs versus a rate of 2.1%, there is savings to be achieved by refinancing together. So that's how we come up with recommending a refunding maximum par amount of $61.5 million. And what we we do request this as a not to exceed. What happens though is once we take bids, and with the lowest interest rate is who we award the bids to. If the bid for the lowest interest rate is what we call a premium bond, in which the coupons that the investors want is higher than the yields, we will reduce the par amount below 61.5 so that we only receive the proceeds to pay these obligations. So we will do the math to make sure that these are the amounts of monies that we're asking for, and we will do the math accordingly. We will not issue more than 61.5 million, but we may issue a little bit less depending, and most likely we will, because of market conditions, we will issue something less than this because of the preferable couponing structure that the investors who buy tax-exempt debt will ask for.
So the 200,000 was over the 10-year period?
That's actually per year.
Per year?
So
Okay.
there's,
Wow,
Oh, yeah.
on a net present value basis, which is
that is
less than a
good.
gross basis, it's about $1.8 million of interest rate savings. So it's significant as well as reducing risk.
It's more attractive than when we talked to you about it earlier,
It
so it's
is.
kind of come to us a little more, so that's great. That makes it even easier. Eliminating the risk is a big thing too for us, because we just don't know that it'll stay the way it is right now. And it's an added complexity administratively. This just is smart on a lot of levels, so.
The next steps in this process, in summary, are here together on February the 14th, asking for your recommendation to the full board. We're wanting to go to a Bowman work session next to explain this to the full board. We would then ask to go to March 12th for consideration of both resolutions, the initial resolution as well as the bond resolution that incorporates the refinancing. We do, for new money issues, we do have to do a published notice in the paper, which we would have ready to go immediately after consideration by the full board. We would go through the process to receive bond ratings, publish offering documents. This is an offered security. We would, by mid-April, select an underwriter by a competitive sale. And as I said, the lowest interest rate would be who we award the bonds to, and then prepare documents to close the 1st of May.
So you need a motion from us on items 2 and 3 to go to the work session on the 26th.
We can do that, or we can put it right on new business for the board if you'd like us to walk through it. Either, yeah, we want to put this on work session. That's right. Yeah.
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 And we-
So just what we've just talked about
Yes. Yeah. Just
already
walk through
needs
that
to
then
be said.
with the full board. Yes.
And this is the schedule that we've got into all the draft documents.
Yeah, that's right.
Can I ask a high-level question? So the debt capacity model, I guess, that we get from that public financial management, did they give us a range of 25 to 45, and we kind of went with the 34? Are
It
there
real-
some assumptions that they built in, like what if we had a
Yeah.
20% drop in sales tax, 20% drop in property tax?
Yeah.
Because some people may see the
Yeah.
34 million and go, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money, but it's well within our,
Yeah, we make some base assumptions on, and fairly conservative about where we are moving forward. This is driven by a combination of that, what fits in our capacity, but also what is needed for these projects. Big picture, this is well within the capacity we identified both when we did the first tier of capital projects, and now we're working on that second tier. So it does fit that, but we make very conservative assumptions about what kind of capacity we're going to have over the long haul to support this debt, and it takes into account the debt that's being retired each year and additional that comes on, and the sources that we connect to these various projects. So anything else you want to add to that?
And that's why PFM, and when we do prepare those models, gives us ranges, because then we go back and we have numerous meetings, consultations with, in this case, and primarily in this case with our engineering staff, of plans for when they can actually, when they will be spending money. And not simply the whole project, but by year and by phase, so that we understand their cash flow needs. And as also, we have cash that we can use, that we don't have to use debt for, grants. So the model gives us the model gives us what we can finance. But when we come for proposals at this point, it's also incorporating what we believe is the best information that we know about the life of the projects by phase, and how we would fund by phase.
And we try to be conservative there as well. We have a 3-year window to spend it, but really Christine, working with engineering, we really talked more about a 2-year window. Just because, and the way we're set up now is to really go to the bond market every other year, 19 and 21. We expect to be back on 21 and probably 23, just to have that sync up with the capital plans overall. And we'll do this same exercise each of those years to look at where we are with approved projects and when we expect to bid, when we expect to draw on those funds, and give ourselves that extra cushion of that 3rd year to if things change, and they always do shift a little bit, but one way or another. But we think we've provided ourselves a lot of flexibility that this will not be a problem to work within that time frame, and that we're well within our capacity. And that's part of why we do all the big picture modeling before we ever start approving projects.
Does that schedule work with you? I mean, I'm just looking at the schedule for the work session on the 26th. You could actually vote on the 26th board meeting if you need that. Do you need it?
Well, I do feel good about this now because we actually have
Okay.
these days. When we just try to talk about whether whether you all would want the full board to kind of get refreshed. You all see this in more detail than the full board in case there was any sort of question. I do have these dates already kind of embedded in documents that it might make it a little
That's fine,
challenging.
that's
But
fine.
but I appreciate your
Yeah.
consideration of what we're going through, because we do appreciate your support, and certainly you see in more detail, and we have dialogue about what the plan of finance is.
Yeah, we think this will work well. It is a significant amount of money, and we did want to give that extra time just to make sure everybody's informed as we move through the process. So we're comfortable that this will work well.
Well, just from a layman's term, it's a significant amount of money, but we're also paying off a significant amount of money. So from a debt standpoint, we're netting out some debt that we're having now, so we're not incurring the 61 million is not all debt.
It's not all new debt.
Yes.
Not all new
It's not all
34.5
new
million.
debt. It's all debt,
Yes.
but it's new debt. And we timed this to be able to achieve two purposes at the same time, and that does add to the story, but these are both debt plans that we would have been bringing to you pretty much at the same time anyway.
Well, I'd entertain a motion to move this to the February 26th BOMA work session, and I'll entertain a motion to move Resolution 2019-12. Let's do a motion on each individual one. To move Resolution 2019-12 to the work session. I'd entertain a motion.
Motion, okay, Mr. Chairman, I move that draft resolution 2019-12 be moved to February the 26th work session.
Proper motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Let's go to item 3. Let's move
Okay.
Resolution 2019-13 to
Chairman?
the,
Yes. I also move that resolution 2019-13 be moved to the February 26th work session.
proper motion, second.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
So items 2 and 3 will go to the February 26th BOMA work session. Christine, anything else?
No, sir.
Anything, item 4, consideration of draft resolution 2019-11, a resolution to revise the organizational chart within the Water Management Department. And here's the organizational change person.
This is not the meeting I'm normally at, so hopefully I don't do well with this. So I think this was a enhancement that was approved a couple years ago, in actually the 2016 budget. So it was approved as an equipment operator. We have since, as we've looked at this a little bit further in kind of the job descriptions, we revised the job description and we sent it off to be graded by HR. It came back a little bit higher than the equipment operator position. And then we had our pay scale adjustment, which moved things up a little bit more. So this is just a simply reclassification of that position so we can actually put it out and hire that.
And we think we'll get a higher level technician in this position.
Yeah,
Which is something we'll benefit from.
Yeah, so this position is actually going to do 4 things within our department, kind of to help us on the sewer and water side. So it'll we have a pretty cool tool called our SLRAT that helps us to kind of assess our sewer system pretty quickly. We've not been able to use that because we kind of need a dedicated person to use that and to manage the data. There's going to be a lot of data that comes from that. They're also going to do valve exercising and hydrant flushing, and then some of our leak detection as well, which is we have new equipment for that we're pretty excited about.
Any questions from the board? Then I'll entertain a motion to send to the full board Resolution 2019-11.
So moved.
Second.
Proper motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item 5, consideration of draft resolution 2019-14, a resolution to revise the organizational chart within the fire department.
Good afternoon. One of the things we worked through with Human Resources as well as Mr. Stuckey's office is to upgrade the Deputy Chief of Operations position to that of Assistant Fire Chief. That position currently manages the vast majority of the employees in the fire department, and it was the only right thing to do to try to upgrade that position. So that's what we're asking for with the board. And also you'll notice the fiscal manager job moves under the fire chief's position, where she can work more directly with me on the budget process.
So we did turn this position over for review by our consultant, Steve Thompson, looking at the breadth and depth of the responsibility of the position, and he did come back with a recommendation that it be moved up a pay grade. So that's really what we're asking you to look at today in terms of this organizational chart change. There is really not related to this reclassification, but there will likely be in our later in the year budget amendment, a further amendment of the fire department budget to allocate some additional pay needs that relate to kind of how we projected out holiday pay, and this year we are going to need to adjust that a little bit. So you will have an amendment. It's not really driven by this reclassification, but there is one forthcoming as we clean up budgets as we typically do at the end of the year. So there will be an adjustment in fire. Overall, we're still well within our total budget means, but I did want to let you know to expect that as well.
Any questions of the chief?
I move that we, move this to the full board.
Proper motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Chief, you got it?
Thank you very much.
So far.
We'll see you a little later.
Let's go to item 6, Police Department and Drug Fund budget presentations.
So as Chief Faulkner and her team's coming up, we're now kicking off our departmental reviews. This is what we've done for the last several years, where we really give the departments an opportunity to talk to you about their needs, how they're performing, what their needs are, what they see as the needs in the community over the coming years. One of the focus points that I've asked all departments to reflect on as they talk to you is also what their needs are, not just this year, but beyond, in the 3 to 5 year window. As the community continues to grow, service demands are going to be an important factor. And so I did ask them to reflect on that and at least share with you, in the best terms they could, what they see coming in terms of either staffing or operational needs, so that we don't lose sight of that when we're just talking about an annual budget. So, Chief Faulkner, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Stuckey, and members of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. I'm honored to be here today to represent the very hardworking, dedicated men and women of the Franklin Police Department. With me today, directly beside me, is our fiscal manager, Will McCarville, and at the end is Deputy Chief Greg Policastro. Also in the gallery here behind me, got my back here, Lieutenant Charles Warner, Lieutenant Joanne Wilhite, and Lieutenant Rick Klaus. I don't think I missed. Oh, sorry, Captain J.P. Taylor. There he is. He's undercover.
Not anymore.
Yeah, I just blew that. Okay. We have, in my opinion, taken some very positive steps over the last 4 years. We've filled our vacancies, we've reorganized, we've improved our fleet, and we've started several new community and crime prevention initiatives, all thanks to you all and how you have supported us. We're greatly appreciative of that. In determining where we go from here, I'm mindful of a number of things, to include the law enforcement profession is constantly changing and at pretty much warp speed these days. Our city is growing leaps and bounds. We are a powerhouse here in Franklin, in the state of Tennessee. We have the best of everything, and Franklin is in the spotlight. The budget prepared for your review includes our needs not only for the next fiscal year, but also we want to share a vision of where we're headed. We must continue cultivating the positive internal momentum and public support that we enjoy. We don't take that for granted. I want the Franklin Police Department to be the premier law enforcement agency in the state of Tennessee, the go-to department when others want to know how to get it right. We must develop exemplary fitness and wellness programs to keep our personnel safe and healthy, mentally, physically, and spiritually. I want our personnel to be the ones that every other agency wants to recruit, but instead they choose to stay here to have their career in law enforcement. An interesting thing happened just last fall. In September, I had 3 members of the Franklin Police Department at the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia. One had been hired by the DEA, one had been hired as an FBI agent, and one was there, Lieutenant Klaus was there, attending the FBI National Academy. So it was like old home week every day up there. The only problem is I lost 2 officers to them. Our training must be on the cutting edge, always staying ahead of the current trends of crime prevention and serving our community. I want to explore all creative ideas to make the Franklin Police Department the best that it can possibly be. I often say that we are the police department that values the people we serve and each other. That must be our culture. Franklin officers are committed to our city. When something happens to one of you all, it impacts us. We take it personal. We'll always maintain our core values of integrity, courage, honor, and duty. And the Franklin Police Department will always be a model of excellence, providing high-quality police services. We must do this by being accountable and continually improving our performance with pride and professionalism. This may sound idealistic. I admit I'm a child of the 70s and the 60s, so I don't care. But it has to be our cornerstone. Now, you, each of you, have been incredibly supportive of your police department, and I thank you. Before I get into the numbers, and I promise I'm going to, I want to quickly tell you what we've been up to the last year. And I have some photos that are going to kind of give you a visual. I'm a visual person, and I think maybe you are too. We received our new SWAT vehicle that you funded. Our officers are extremely proud of it. Not only have we used it for high-impact calls for service, but it's become a part of our community outreach. I can tell you that kids love seeing that SWAT vehicle and interacting with our SWAT officers. And actually, our guys kind of love it too. We now have our driving simulator. This was a very innovative piece of equipment that I think a great deal of. It's an amazing addition to our training curriculum. We use it for entry-level training, for in-service, advanced training, and remedial training. Also for our citizen groups. It gives them an opportunity to actually experience what officers go through when they pull up in a police vehicle and they are involved in a potential altercation with a criminal. We also use it for de-escalation training. In 2018, the second leading cause of death in the line of duty for police officers was auto crashes. There were 26 in the United States. There's been 6 so far this year. They're second only to gunfire, which took the lives of 52 police officers. We will continue this training to ensure that our officers can travel as safely as possible, even when running emergency. Officers receive training on the use of Narcan. I hate to admit that. I never thought we'd be to this point, but we are. It's now standard operating procedure that all officers carry Narcan. Just since the first of this year, officers have used it 4 times on 3 individuals, one they used it twice on. They also carry tourniquets on their vests. That's the new normal. Franklin officers who are certified Swiftwater Rescue traveled with members of the Franklin Fire Department to South Carolina after hurricane flooding. They assisted and rescued both people and animals during those horrible times. They were very tough days after the storm, and we're very proud of them for doing that. Body-worn cameras is a new normal for us. We added those to our officers' uniforms last year, and this has proven to be a tremendous asset. One of the slides that you're seeing, I think it's the next one, is where the batteries are being charged in the patrol roll call room, ready to be swapped out when the officers show up for roll call and come to work. The department offered over 25 active shooter classes for citizens, businesses, and churches last year. Officers also provided de-escalation training to various businesses and also CPTED surveys, which I believe Lieutenant Klaus is doing one today. This is crime prevention through environmental design. Knowledge is power for both our citizens and our officers. When they are placed in harm's way, we want them to know what they could do in order to save their lives. We purchased a mobile camera. This is our eye in the sky. There it is on a trailer. We use this during special events, and it works great for finding lost children or just managing large crowds in our downtown Main Street area. We've continued our Citizens Police Academy. We offer it twice a year now. Session 38 starts on April the 4th. Plus, we offer Teen Academy now. We'll have our 4th one this summer when school is out. The department, there's the teenagers there with Officer Schumann. The department offers self-defense classes for women, known as RAD, and that was taken last night. There's a class going on right now. That's a fairly small woman who's looks like she's giving one of our guys a run for his money. He's wearing the red man suit, and she's punching him out. I guarantee you she's never done that before, but she's learning her power and what she can do to defend herself. Franklin Flex officers are members of Metro's Juvenile Crime Task Force, and they attend regular meetings in Nashville. This includes intelligence gathering, sharing that intelligence information, and it's a tremendous relationship that has been developed with surrounding law enforcement agencies dealing with some of the same crime issues that we are. We hosted a region-wide meeting at the police department just this week to continue this discussion regarding this horrible increase in juvenile crime. Several next steps were developed, and we have partnered with local and area plus state law enforcement to apprehend criminals who are problematic for the entire metropolitan area. Several members of our SWAT team received dignitary protection training last year. I can't tell you how incredibly smart this was. I didn't realize how brilliant I was for doing that until election night in November. It turned out, there's 3 of our SWAT guys who are trained in dignitary protection. At that time, Congressman Blackburn did not have a security team. Well, guess who her security team was election night when she became senator for the state of Tennessee. We also had members at the factory for then elected Governor Lee to also help provide security for him. Senator Blackburn has had a number of people from Washington who are very high profile come and visit her, and the Secret Service has asked us to assist with that, and we have, and they were very impressed with the fact that we had members who had been specially trained. The department implemented a police chaplain program last year and a peer support group to assist officers and their families in need. They also go with officers when they have to do something that is one of the most dreaded things that we do have to do, and that's to deliver death messages to families. Maybe they've been harmed or they've been killed out of state, and we have to go and notify them. Many times a chaplain will go with us, accompany officers to make those message deliveries. We do continuous training related to crisis intervention. Law enforcement officers are often the first on the scene when someone's having a mental health crisis. How we respond, what we say, makes a tremendous difference when someone needs crisis intervention and life-saving help. Officers were on a call just as I came in here out at Rolling Hills. So it's almost an everyday situation. During the holidays, our flex officers rolled out the Not in Our Mall initiative with great intensity. I mean, they went after it. Officers recovered over $65,000 in stolen merchandise and made 121 arrests just at Cool Springs Mall. And tonight, our Police Honor Guard will present the flags and the colors during the national anthem at the Predators game. So if you're going, you'll see our Honor Guard there. I'm very proud of them. They look sharp. Now that's a brief overview of some of the activities the department has been involved in over the past few months. And I hope that's been helpful to you. We don't get to show you all these things unless we take advantage of this opportunity, so thanks for indulging me on that. The police department's budget that you've received is primarily status quo with a couple of exceptions. Computer hardware reflects an estimate provided by Information Technology for computer replacement. Those are line items that might be a little bit higher based on their estimate. Utilities reflects an estimated cost based on guidance provided by finance. In our CID computer services, some of the software programs that they use for investigations, and also the addition of CID interview cameras. Our interview rooms have new cameras that link with our body cameras. Now, fuel and insurance should be about the same as last year. So other than that, it's fairly straightforward. Now, I'm presenting 11 performance enhancements today for your consideration. The first one and the last one, number 1 and number 11, have a major impact on the next 3 to 5 years. And Mr. Stuckey had given us excellent guidance on being mindful of that. I looked at the department's needs and narrowed them down to replacing outdated equipment, doing some additional training, 2 new equipment needs, and adding police officer positions. This is not a budget that has any frills, in my opinion. I'm extremely fiscally conservative, not to sound like a politician, and I strive always to spend taxpayer money wisely. I'm focused on providing quality police services to the people of Franklin, and that's all. Are you ready to jump into the first one? I'm mindful of these people behind me, so I don't want to go too fast, but I also want to be mindful of your time. I value that. The first one is, of course, the police officer positions. We have had the same number of budgeted positions for some time now, and I'd like to try to up the ante at least 6. This would be graduated over a 2 or 3 year period to add some additional officers. We're looking at 16 new budgeted positions over a period of 3 years. 6 this coming year, then 5, and then 5 more. We work extremely hard, and again, we're mindful of overtime, but our officers work well over 10,000 extra duty hours this past year. And that's special events, all the different activities that occur in our city that, we're very happy about, but you've got to have public safety. I am very much mindful and concerned about fatigue and burnout and safety and, making sure that our officers' performance continues at a high level. So I'd like to add some additional people to the mix.
That's 655.
6 this coming year, then 5 the next, and then 5 the next, for the next 3 years. Like I said, the first performance enhancement and the last one are kind of looking forward.
And that will give you a grand total of?
145. We're at 130 now, budgeted police officers.
Well, as the city grow, we will continue to need the manpower.
Yes, ma'am.
And that actually is a similar authorized strength to what we had 10 years ago. Now, we didn't have them all full, and we held vacant positions for a number of years, and then probably about 4 or 5 years ago, we brought numbers down across the organization for vacancies we had not filled for an extended period of time. So we sort of trued up our authorized strength. This brings us closer to what it was maybe 10 years ago or so, but it wasn't filled at that point, but this is a number that we've worked around previously, so we've sort of brought it back up. This recommendation brings it back up closer to that level.
I like the diversity of that picture. That was a graduation of just a year or so ago. The first officer there has been deployed, and he's just arrived back. That's why I've been flying a Blue Star flag in front of headquarters. And he's Chinese American. And then we have, of course, a couple of females. The second officer there served 3 tours, I believe, in the Middle East. He was a medic in the military. And the last one there, I guess would be on the left side in the background. He is from Kentucky and has turned out to be an amazing officer. We're doing as good a job as we possibly can to bring more diversity to our department. We have a Laotian officer. Is that him, Johnny Pomachek? Okay, a Laotian officer, Laotian American in the picture, and we've also taken advantage of officers leaving other departments, as you might suspect. We have one who was a Dallas police officer for 12 years who's bilingual, one who is from the Atlanta area, and I've got 4 in the mix from Metro Nashville PD. They're going to have 4 more vacancies if I can help it.
What you're looking at 16, what is your turnover? For retirement? You know that, but you probably do know what's on the horizon for retirement. I'm just looking at the number of new police officers that you would have in the department, say in 3 years, if you're just, do you know how many you anticipate retiring?
I really can't say. I know I have some who are eligible, but I don't ask them, are you retiring? I just don't do that.
Thank you for not doing that.
I know.
No, I'm not suggesting
They're
that
eligible.
you do that.
Yes.
I'm asking you eligible
Understand.
for retirement.
Yeah, probably 10 or so that could, close to that 20, 23 year, 25 years.
So out of the 130, out of the 145, you could have 30 new police officers in, give or take.
But you have quite a few young ones too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
And that's part of why
That's
the foundation we provide for folks in terms of training and,
as much as you can with that.
support both as they come on and throughout their time with us is an important part, and Chief's been a strong advocate of that.
And I'm fortunate that even our Master Patrol officers who are our training officers, many of those are lateral officers who came here with a lot of experience. And, they worked the streets of Franklin, got up to speed, and now they're amazing training officers. Had a lot of training other departments paid for. If you're ready, I'll go to enhancement number 2, and that's an oldie but a goodie, but we got to have cars. We've got to have new vehicles. Now, we are requesting in this particular enhancement 20 marked Ford Explorer SUVs and 5 unmarked Ford Explorer SUVs. And that will pretty much catch us up with eliminating all of those Dodge Chargers that we have that are very high mileage. This should help quite a bit in eliminating most of those. We'll use some of them as pool cars or officers that, cars that we need extra in case one of them's in the shop. And they all will be equipped with the new dash cameras that coordinate with our body cameras and so on. This will standardize the repairs. We won't have parts for Chevrolets and parts for Dodges and parts for Fords. We'll have just all the Ford SUV parts. All right, number 3, our tasers. Now, this is a less than lethal weapon that all of our officers carry on their gun belt. And the model that we currently have is an older model. As of January 2019, Axon, which also manufactures our body cameras, was known as Taser. And they have our tasers. Now, the problem is that the X26 model that we're currently using, they will no longer have batteries and cartridges for those. So they're almost forcing us to transition to another model. What we're proposing to do is make that transition a 2-year phase, so it's not all at once. But as we work through those and take the oldest ones and replace them to the newer ones, and then the next year, we'll finish that out and have all new tasers. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Okay, number 4, increasing our overtime budget. We do a lot of training, we have a lot of investigations, extra directed patrols, and a lot of special events, and that requires some overtime. I am conservative with it, but I have found that you gotta do what you gotta do, and it takes money. Forgive me, I put this slide in just because that shows 2 of our officers working Dickens of a Christmas, dressed as Bobbies.
For undercover.
Yeah, that is a very popular uniform that they wear. There are more pictures of that on Facebook and Instagram than you can probably shake a nightstick at. But they have a good time. That's Officer Howe and Detective Sandrell. They're characters. The 5th one is a portable security tower. And this is something new. A lot of departments are using those now. It's a high aerial observation. We had the ability to use a building that was under construction for the square and for Main Street and Dickens, but unfortunately that's going to be a restaurant now, and we won't be able to use it. But this will come in handy during pilgrimage and any of those big events in some of our parks. Not only would we use, but also the fire department, who also supports us on this. It's a tower that would be an enhancement for them as well. You see this as in a lot of the larger cities. I know Metro Nashville has one, but it certainly gives us that vantage point to be able to watch the entire crowd and see if we spot anything from a safety standpoint, and whether it's an injury or someone in distress or a bad actor that showed up and wants to start some trouble, or a lost child. So we can use it in coordination with our camera. Dignitary protection training. I would like to train more officers in that, and not just for people who come here who are leaders and political leaders. We feel like during the next campaign cycle there will be a number of people who will come in and out of the Franklin area. So that would be a good thing. But also we have a lot of CEOs who live here, country music entertainers and other entertainers, and even some of you all. We, you know, the mayor doesn't know it, but we're often watching his back. And thank you. And when we have high-profile events, and we just kind of want to keep an eye, and having people specially trained to know how to be quick in responding to that, and then working with our partners at both the state and federal level, I think, are important. I mean, our governor lives here. We have 2 Supreme Court members here. One is a chief Supreme Court justice. We have an appellate judge that lives here. We have 4 state commissioners who live in the Franklin area. So, again, we are in the spotlight, and we want to be mindful of their protection. Number 7, our community room, which everybody in the city uses, has some technology issues. I think we have some pictures of it. You see some wires, and there's a projector that's missing. We can only use 1/2 of the room for audiovisual. The other half is no longer working. And so this quote and this information that we have is from our information technology department. They've told us what we need and what it costs. And so not only for our benefit, but anybody who wants to use that room would need this audiovisual equipment, and it's just old. It's worn out. So number 8, a license plate reader.
Uh-oh.
What
Probably.
is that? What's that for?
Now, this is not for traffic enforcement. You seem worried, Alderman Barnhill. We're already test driving one right now, and you haven't been caught yet. So we've already gotten some
Haven't
hits
been
on
notified
it.
yet.
That's right. That's right. It's not one of those that says, look, you were 50 miles over the speed limit, and here's your ticket. It's not like that. This goes against a national database, and it tells us if somebody's car is stolen, or if it has wants or warrants on it. And we've already gotten a couple of hits on the one that we're testing out right now, and it's been most helpful in working with Brentwood and Metro and letting them know that that car came through here. So, and what time and where, and who, we have a picture of, you know, who was in it. So we are testing one now, and we'd like to own one and kind of see how it works for us, and then maybe come back to you at some point and say, you know, this would be great to have in a number of places in the city. Now, we're using it in a mobile-like fashion. It's not stationary. We can move it around. I'm not going to tell you what we've got it on because, well, there's other people watching this, and they may not have our best interests at heart. And but it's really the law enforcement technology of not only the present but the future. It's a great asset to deploy this throughout the city and help us apprehend criminals and solve crimes. And that's all it's used for, is to looking for stolen cars and wants and warrants. Next is number 9. We are really blessed in that we have a workout area in our building, but we've got 2 treadmills that are just worn out. One of them's not, it's completely unplugged, and you can see the belt on that one is just worn out. So we're encouraging them as far as our strategic plan towards health and wellness, and it's kind of a bummer not to have decent treadmills. So we're looking at replacing those with a commercial grade, 2 of them. These are about, I don't know, I think they were there when they moved into the new building, so they're getting close to 8 or 9 years old, and they're about had it. They've had some miles put on them. Number 10, these are storage containers. Now, we currently have these at the gun range and at our tow-in lot, but we rent them. And we kind of did the numbers on that and said, you know, this is a little stupid. We could own these, and we paid for them in a couple of years. So these are used to store things that we can't store in our property room because either they're flammable or it's ammunition or something that, you know, you should not have in your building. So we can secure these. It makes more sense to me to purchase these and own them instead of continually renting them. So that's what that is, and there's a picture of what we're using now. And this is the last one, and it's also one that we need to think about, not only now but for the future, and what makes sense as far as the smart way to deal with this. Now, our gun range is over on Century, and it's been there about 15 years. It's an outdoor range. And you can see it's pretty, not only beat up, but shot up. And it's out in the weather, so there's some rust and there's some wear and tear. So we're trying to figure out what I've submitted to you and what it would cost to bring that up to speed, to replace some of the components and controls, remove the old ones, and make it much more operational for our officers to use for qualifications. But also being mindful of what's being built right behind us, which is Shadow Green. And you've probably not been over there where the gun range is, but you can stand there and you can watch all the construction equipment right over the burn. And so I've talked about it with Mr. Stuckey about, you know, what makes sense. Do we want to look at eventually building a indoor range in our lower level, which is what Brentwood's doing in their new building. They're building one that's an inside because they have trouble getting use of an outdoor range. Or do we want to make all of the changes that it would take to baffle the noise, because we're going to have new neighbors behind us, and make it much more secure to use? So I've submitted this for your consideration and discussion. We can submit more information if you need it. We've sort of looked at what we could do in our downstairs area. We can certainly put one downstairs. I haven't had an architect look at it because it may not be smart to do that right now, but we feel like we do have the space for it. But there's lots of, you know, air quality issues that you have to be aware of when you build an indoor range, and noise and so on. But that's also right beside where we have our driving simulator. So we have some noise there, but we don't hear it upstairs.
Do you have room someplace to build an indoor?
We do.
Without putting it in the police department?
Oh, well,
Without?
it's the lower level of our building.
Right.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Where the cardio room is, I don't know if you know where that is, downstairs on the lower level.
Okay.
We kind of roughed it out on our blueprint. We could put 3 to 4 lanes down there, shooting lanes. But this is rough. I mean, the architect didn't do this, we did this.
All right.
But it's something to think about moving forward, because we do know that this will be apartments on the other side of the road, and we're mindful of neighbors. And we do shoot at night, especially our SWAT team. Night firing is something that we have to prepare for. I mean, gun battles don't happen just in the daytime. So,
Give us some real numbers.
okay, be glad to. And that's all I have on that. And if you want to talk drug fund, it's fairly straightforward. 1/2 of all fines from drug offenses, any cash that's forfeited to the city or the county, as well as the proceeds from the sale of any forfeited property, usually vehicles, go into our drug fund. It's a donation. And there are very strict TCA requirements as far as this, what we can spend it on, what we can do with it, and I can guarantee you that, you know, we scrutinize it very closely. We have included what our revenues and expenditures were for the past year and what we guesstimate for the coming year. It's hard to know that. We don't always know, you know, what the courts are going to award us. So it's clearly just a guess as far as the coming year. Did I miss anything on that?
I don't think so. We don't have any recurring costs from the drug fund, so basically you can spend what you get. So we're mindful of what we take in and what we spend.
Chief, anything else? Any questions from the committee?
Police dogs. We don't have them anymore?
We do not have dogs.
But is there, when you need such a service?
The county,
Go.
the sheriff's department. We had 3, and one of the canine officers took a job in the private sector. So, no, one officer went to work for the Judicial Task Force. Now he works for the sheriff's department, and his dog was older, so it retired. So then we had a second officer who went to the private sector, and we only had 1 canine officer and 2 dogs. We posted for it twice. Not a single officer wanted that commitment. It's a huge commitment to have a dog. It's 24/7. Even when you're off, you've got to feed it, and you've got to be constantly aware of safety issues. It's not just a commitment on the part of the officer, but their family.
Yeah.
I mean, the wife and kids have got to be involved in it and feel comfortable with it, being in the yard, in the kennel, sometimes in the house. And we posted for it twice, and none of the officers stepped up for it. It was just kind of more of a commitment than they were wanting to take on at this point. And so I discussed it with Sheriff Long. If we were going to lose those dogs at the department level, I at least wanted them in our county, because they were excellent dogs, well-trained dogs, and they agreed. And so when we need a dog, we have access to their dogs, as well as their helicopter and their robot and all their other bells and whistles that they have, because they're a much larger agency than we are.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I hated it, you know. I love those dogs, but
I like your nail polish.
thank you, yours too.
Was that on the agenda?
That was my comment.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chief.
I appreciate
Appreciate that.
Thank you for indulging me and letting me share some of this. I'm very proud of this department, and I hope it shows. And I think it's a department that's worthy of my pride, and I hope yours as well. They work very hard, and they care very much. And like I said, when something happens, I mean, we're devastated. When, you know, we take it personal. It's not just your property, it's ours. It's not your loved one, it's ours too. So I hope you hear that, and always know that. And we appreciate your consideration on this budget and all these requests that we have.
Thank you,
And we
Chief.
appreciate all you do. And thank you, Mr. Stuckey and Mayor Moore. Just leave this.
Chief, you're carrying a great many people out with you.
She's well protected.
it,
Well,
yeah.
Little buddy showed up after I sat down.
Let's go to item 7, Fire Department. Chief? And Chief and Chief. Pull up 2 or 3 of those others. Yeah. Yeah, get.
Good afternoon. I'm Rocky Garzick, the fire chief in this great community, and we're proud to be sitting here and representing the men and women of the Franklin Fire Department. Before you is our budget presentation, and I would just like to say that we've always been good stewards of our citizens' monies that we receive, and we will continue that commitment to our citizens. I'm going to cover a few things, and then I'm going to turn it over to my staff members, particularly Todd Horton, Deputy Chief. He talks a little faster than I do, so we might get through this whole presentation if he presents part of it. But mainly it's we're going to cover a few things, but I'd like to maybe on page 3 where we talk about our number of calls that have increased in our organization. And as you can see, we've had about a 15% increase in our number of calls. And for the first time, we've topped over 9,000 emergency calls in the fire department. So, and we're also real proud of the fact that our average response time is 4 minutes and 49 seconds for those calls. That's from the time that our firefighters receive that call and get dispatched in the station to their arrival on the scene where they can start usually medical treatment of those patients in the field, because as y'all know, about 70% of our calls are emergency medical calls nowadays. So I'll turn it over to Chief Horton at this point in time.
Good afternoon. We're going to go through some of our achievements over the past year, just so that that you and the listening audience can understand what your fire department is engaged in. All fire stations now throughout the city have been equipped with station alerting systems, which allow us to activate only stations that are necessary to respond to emergency incidents. And this is a huge benefit for our employees during the nighttime hours, so that we don't wake up all 52 on shift when it may be only 2 that need to respond to the emergency. So we're extremely proud of the benefits that our people have received for that. It keeps them fresh for the more important calls like structure fires. We've also put status monitors up in every fire station now that gives us real-time situational awareness of all the activity that's taking place in the city, whether that's emergency calls that are taking place, whether that's weather and traffic conditions that we're being experienced, or whether that's the number of fire hydrants that need serviced or painted, or what the water department is doing about fixing certain hydrants that have been broken. We are constantly investing in new technologies that the city already owns to be able to give us more situational awareness about what's occurring throughout the community. We've also increased our vehicle-based software, allowing us to ensure that we are dispatching the right resources for the right type of calls. The closest unit, which obviously yields us better patient outcomes when it comes to medical care or any other outcome for fire and other related incidents. We also, as you know, have awarded the bid for the construction of Fire Station 7. I believe that there will be some groundwork that begins probably very soon this month.
Yeah. Notice to proceed was given on Monday.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're excited about that, and it will obviously replace the temporary fire station that we currently have in the Goose Creek area. The city deployed, as Chief Faulkner mentioned, the city deployed 15 personnel to South Carolina in response to Hurricane Florence. That included 10 members of the fire department, 4 from the police department, and 1 from our IT department. And they, along with 106 other Tennessee responders, assisted boat evacuations of residents who were stranded by floodwaters over a 15-day period. And shortly thereafter, we sent 2 additional personnel for 7 days to the Golden Beach, Oregon, and we joined up with an incident management team out of California to help manage those that were involved in firefighting a 98,000-acre wildland fire. And these experiences bring invaluable training opportunities for our people so that we're better able to manage disasters that may affect our community. So we're thankful for the continued support of that initiative. We've ordered 5 new apparatus this year, which has been quite an undertaking, but we actually received the first vehicle tomorrow, which is a heavy rescue vehicle. Next Wednesday, we'll receive the second vehicle, which is a replacement tower truck. About 1 month later, we'll receive another tower truck. In July, we will receive both a hazardous material response vehicle and a technical rescue vehicle. And then in September, we will receive an engine for the Goose Creek station that is being replaced. So we're excited about that. We've also been fortunate enough to promote 2 of our existing people to assistant fire marshal this year, 1 to fire lieutenant, 1 to fire inspector, and 1 to fire engineer. In our area of prevention, we reviewed an estimated 406 planning projects, an estimated 265 fire protection projects, conducted 1,377 building inspections for new construction, and 598 inspections of existing buildings. We installed 365 child passenger safety seats, conducted 21 fire drills for 10,610 residents, and taught CPR to 115 people. We also conducted 114 apparatus demonstrations and station tours that reached over 12,000 of our citizens. And then we also presented the Great Escapes program to 970 fifth grade students. In some of our fire training, it's important to know that our employees are engaged in all sorts of training, preparing them to deal with all types of emergencies. So if you review this list, rapid intervention team training was done department-wide, and that's training our people how to save our people should we become in trouble. Vehicle extrication, removing people from automobile accidents when they're trapped in their cars. All hazardous incident management class, which is, again, how we support other communities in times of disasters. These people are trained to be able to manage certain aspects of a disaster response. A nozzle forward program, a fire inspector 1 program, a fire instructor 2 program. Allergies, medical training as allergies and anaphylaxis, toxicology and substance abuse, pediatric advanced life support, patient care documentation, catanography, which measures the carbon dioxide levels in patients, advanced cardiovascular life support, medical and trauma skills lab. And we have currently 1 person in paramedic school, 3 in advanced EMT school, 2 in EMT school, and 3 in emergency medical responder class. In our specialized rescue training, we've incorporated rope rescue, structural collapse, hazmat drills, confined space rescue, rope rescue operations and technician level, swift water operations and technician level, water rescue proficiency, trench rescue, advanced shoring, and rescue systems 1. And then we also successfully completed 2 Fire Recruit Academy classes with attendees from the City of Dixon Fire Department, Dixon County EMS, and also members of the Lawrenceburg, Murfreesboro, and Spring Hill Fire Departments. And collectively, our department documented over 62,000 hours of training last year alone, which is an average of 350 hours per employee. Our organization chart has not changed from what was presented last year, so unless you would like me to go over that, we will continue. So when we look at our budget numbers, our base budget for personnel for FY19, the base budget was $15,812,000, which includes all wages and benefits. And FY20 shows a slight reduction of $65,668, or a 1.3% reduction. Some of that is simply related to we've worked really hard to watch our overtime budget, and we're trending about $120,000 less than what we budgeted for this year. The fire department presently has 172 authorized positions. Just a quick reminder that we're always, just like Chief Faulkner is, we want to train our people and retain our people, but they're also people that other agencies like to be able to take away from us. So I just wanted to present you this little chart that continues to show our turnover rate that we experience. We've already lost 7 people in this since this fiscal year started, so we're trending again close to the average. We've had only, out of all of those turnovers, we've only had 3 of those who have retired over the last 3 years. So the rest of them have left for other opportunities, been recruited out of our organization. This is an average, if you take the entire 13-year span, it's an average of 7 employees a year. In operations, our total operations budget is, we're asking for a 5.4 increase in total operations, and the majority of that is simply to keep up with inflation. Our program enhancements, which are new additions to our budget request, and in some cases, large dollar loss replacements. We have 19 requests this year that affect both the general fund and the facilities tax funds. Rather than presenting you with 2 separate budgets, we simply rolled it all into one for the purposes of this meeting. So in the general fund, there's 15 requests totaling just over $3 million. Facilities tax 4 requests, $869,000. And we'll break down each one of those, not every one, but we just want to highlight some of the more important ones with slides, and then we'll briefly go through the list of the remaining ones. So I'm going to let Assistant Chief Johnson talk about this one. I'm sorry.
That's
Thank
okay. You can have the next one. How's that? This is a request that you've heard for probably 2 to 3 years now, and this is for 3 fire safety officers. It's a equivalent of a lieutenant pay grade, but it does several things for our organization. The plan would be to put them probably on the air truck, which responds to all working fire incidents, but it also allows them to start the fire investigation and call for additional resources after the scene is under control. The importance of that, though, is when they first arrive on the scene, they're also a huge support to the battalion chief who's in charge. It also provides them at that position, because they're a single person in that vehicle, to be able to respond to a secondary call within our city. And so it provides some redundancy, some safety officer abilities on the scene, fire investigation duties, and then probably even more important is all of the other, we hear the trend here of the special events that go on. Our city is happening after 5 o'clock every day. It's happening on the weekends. And so all of the special events that we have fire inspectors there. We have complaints that come in on Christmas Eve about overcrowding of restaurants. Instead of sending fire companies to address those, it's much better to send a certified inspector and somebody that knows how to deal with that, to do occupancy checks, to do those things on nights and weekends when they occur. And so that's why this is a interesting and what would be a great assignment for somebody who's looking for a new challenge in their career, but also contributes a lot and keeps things going. The final thing I'll say about this is that we also have a lot of automatic fire alarms that go off. And so the sooner we can get companies back in service and let somebody track those down and figure out what the problem is and reduce those in the future, those all contribute to operational efficiencies. So that's a good summary.
Thanks, Chief King. Now, Chief Johnson.
Thank you. Again, this year we're going to ask for 3 new training instructors to be placed on shift. This is a reoccurring ask that we've been seeking. As you can see in some of the Chief Horton's presentation, we do a lot of training, and we're trying to utilize our personnel in the best way possible. Since 2007, we've had 2 training officers. We think it's now time to add some different avenues to provide this training. 68% of our calls are medical, so we do need to add that element in there. These personnel will be used for not only fire, but also to enhance our medical program as well. So we would appreciate your support on this.
So the, I think I got a slide out of order here. Some of the other overall general fund capital vehicle budget requests for 2020, which you've seen a little bit of this, I believe, in the first presentation of the day, is for $2,447,000, and it includes the replacement of a fire engine that is 16 years old, a replacement of a ladder truck, which is 14 years old, a battalion replacement who is our shift commander, and also a couple of rapid response units with transport capabilities that will replace 2 of our existing vehicles, as well as to replace 2 staff vehicles. Those are all in line with our vehicle replacement schedule, and all of these vehicles that will be replaced will go into reserve capacity for at least another 5 years, and that will allow us to surplus vehicles that are much older than these. So our general fund request of $115,500 includes the addition of 3 cardiac monitors, life support monitors, and these would be added to our tower companies. Those are the only 3 remaining vehicles in our fleet that do not have the ability to provide paramedic level care, which is advanced medical care for people who are suffering in our city. If we're approved with this, then all vehicles in the city will be equipped with both paramedics and equipment to be able to provide that level of care. And as the chief has already mentioned, with 70% of our call volume being medical in nature and our continued population aging and increasing, and a number of assisted living facilities that are approved in our community, the amount of those calls will just continue to rise. Stair chairs, we'll go through this list fairly quickly. You could certainly interrupt me if you have any questions about each one of them, but stair chairs are simply devices that allow us to be able to move patients up and down flights of stairs without creating additional risk and injury to our responders. So this is to add 3 of those strategically located throughout the city to help with that. Operative IQ software, as the department continues to grow, we need the ability to be able to do inventory asset management and also medications and control and tracking of those. And Operative IQ software is one example of a software that provides a multifaceted approach to asset tracking and management. And we believe it's well time that we invest in something that allows us to be able to more easily accommodate for those things. Apparatus vehicle camera system, this would be placed on one of our tower trucks. While we desire apparatus vehicle camera systems on all vehicles, we're allowing attrition to take the place of some of our older fleet. But this vehicle is more of a newer vehicle that's going to be with us a while, so we'd like to go ahead and outfit it with a vehicle camera system, which provides protection for our employees from frivolous lawsuits and other things, because we can be able to pull up and dispute maybe sometimes citizen complaints about how we behaved. But it also provides advanced situational awareness from us on incidents where there will be a camera mounted to the top of the ladder truck, for instance, that goes up 75 feet in the air, that gives us some overall situational awareness about fire scenes and other emergencies that are happening in our city. An ozone sterilization unit is a fairly new type of technology that now is in a portable mode, and we can place this ozone sterilization unit in any enclosed environment and kill 650 known pathogens. Our people are exposed to all kind of things when they're out there responding to these emergencies, and so we can target and move that around occasionally to wipe out anything that may be there and help protect the health and safety of our firefighters. Video laryngoscopes just provide the ability for us to do advanced airway intubation to allow more successful patient outcomes for those who are in need of that care. Extractor and dryer for training center. Our training center, of course, all of our firefighters are going through the training center every day doing some kind of training, and these devices allow us to protect our gear by properly cleaning them and drying them and making them available for them to respond to calls again. Our driving pad is a number of years old now. It's the original pad from when that whole facility was built. And it's developed a number of cracks throughout in various places and broken up concrete, and it's become time for us to address those issues. Telestaff software, as you all know, we use the Kronos software for our financial management piece and our attendance and timekeeping piece. Telestaff is owned by Kronos, and what Telestaff does is it is a self-automated staff scheduling software that allows us to do that automatically. For instance, if a person needs to call in sick or take a vacation day, they call into the system. The system looks at the city rules and the fire department rules, and it finds out who's qualified to fill that position. It makes that call to that employee, or it can do that through an app. The employee can accept the overtime, or it approves the vacation time. If a spot needs to be filled, it calls and fills that spot. So basically, right now, we have a captain's position at Station 2, 1 per shift, that spend about 12 to 15 hours sitting at the computer doing nothing but managing all of the staffing intricacies that happen in the fire department every day. And this would free up that person to be able to do what they're really designed to do, and that's manage the staff and manage the call volume. And since it integrates into our Kronos system, it provides that full automation for payroll and timekeeping. Outdoor warning siren. Oh, okay, thank you, Chief. Chief just pointed out that this is all out of the facilities tax as well, these next few items here. Add an additional outdoor warning siren. We have 21 in service now. We are preparing to install another one that we already have purchased out in the south end of town, Lewisburg Pike. And then this particular siren we would be placing on Carruthers Parkway, where a lot of the new construction is happening just off of from the Ag Center up toward 96 East, kind of in the middle there. We're asking again for a used fuel truck. It's when you really stop and think about how much fuel the city uses each and every day, not only from vehicles, but also emergency generators and other things. Things like pipeline breaks or things like extended power outages from disasters and other things put us in a vulnerable state for that first 72 hours. And we're looking at this particular vehicle that we could potentially sustain ourselves with fuel for up to 72 hours while we wait on additional resources to be able to come into the city. We also are proposing an air light response vehicle out of the facilities tax budget. This would be a large vehicle similar to the one we're taking delivery of tomorrow, but it specializes in providing additional lighting, rehabilitation for our personnel to be able to get in out of the extreme heat or extreme cold temperatures when they're on extended incidents to rehab and rehabilitate. There's just a look of an example of one of those fuel trucks. As the police chief mentioned, the city administrator did ask us to present to you all the 3 to 5 year outlook of what we see happening in the fire department. We've broken these down. It's certainly not an exhaustive list, but it is a list that can be looked at for future operational planning. We're looking at adding an accreditation manager to be able to work toward accreditation of our fire agency, adding 2 staff to the emergency management portion of our department, adding an office manager, adding an EMS medical director, which would be in a contract form. It would not be someone that physically works here at the city. 2 additional EMS division staff, an EMS trainer to help in the training aspect of our people, 24 operational staff. That's adding 24 positions to our department. And again, that has to do with adding additional stations that are forecasted over the next several years, as well as increasing our staff just to be able to manage the call volume. Adding a special operations EMS battalion chief, and adding 2 additional training staff. And some of that, of course, is already been mentioned in our earlier request. That's just part of that 3 to 5 year overlook. So as the chief started off the meeting, we certainly want you to know that we strive to provide the highest level of service to those who live and those who visit our community. And we want to be good stewards of the money that you appropriate to us. And we're just thankful for the board's continued support, as it has for many years, for us to be able to do that. So we're happy to entertain any questions that you have.
Questions or comments?
Well done.
Thank you all so much.
I have one quick question. Those for future projections, 3 to 5 years, what's the total of that request or projection for equipment, personnel?
That's a good question, Mayor. It's not totaled on here.
We have to do some math here real quick, Mayor.
Oh, you can just text it to us.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Email it.
Thank you.
Is a lot a good answer? Because it's a lot.
I noticed it's a lot. I'm just kind of curious what the lot.
And I'll be straightforward. Part of why I'm asking folks to do this too is we'll have some sales tax dollars that begin to come to us at the end of the 3-year commitment period. And one of the things we did when we talked to you about capital investments is we dedicated half of that towards capital projects, but the other half we made an assumption that we're going to need that in operations. I don't know exactly how all that plays out, but I know a significant portion. This gives you a sense of some of the things we're talking about when we say that are, we have stretched resources and worked smarter and we're going to continue to do that in every way we can. But at a certain point, you got to add additional people, additional equipment to serve what is becoming a larger city, a larger surface area, geographical area to serve as well as the additional citizens. So that's what I asked staff to give good thought about and put what they, in their best estimation, see as things we would likely see in the next 5-year period.
So the 3 to 5, so actually in 2,
Yeah, it's really
in 2 years.
Yeah,
2 years and a few
little more than
months.
2. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Y'all can keep the first year.
So we can, okay,
Thank you.
Yeah.
thank you. 2 things. Let's go to parks, but also let's take about 5 minutes. Is that agreeable with everyone?
Sounds good. Yeah.
Is that agreeable?
Lisa's got a lot of stuff to set up anyway.
5 minutes, sounds good.
Well, just wait. Just wait.
Really? Yeah.
You know, it's amazing that people do not read the paper. Sometimes they're not on the internet.
Yeah, we assume people know stuff. Oh, okay, on the, yeah. That's great. Yeah. When did we get it to them? Oh, yeah, you're thinking they're still working on it. Yeah, sure. Well, those must have been the last questions they, you know what I mean?
Hey Clyde, how much time you got left to get started? How much more time you got to get started?
Whenever on there.
Okay, I put my
Saw
stuff
the
in.
notice in Gary about us meeting some retirees. Well, no, we. Pam, Steve. I'm sorry. That must have been 35 retirees in there. Some of them didn't even know why we were here. But a lot of them.
Oh, do each other's budgets? That could get really interesting. That could get ugly. I mean, they're asking levels. Remember we fought there. Really good deal on that truck. Seriously, you found it somewhere and like, oh, that's a good idea, let's bring it forward. So it was probably 8 years ago? Cause I.
They are, beware, they are.
You may get some calls.
Okay. Let's go back, reconvene or whatever we did to get out of the situation that we were in. Anyway, Parks Department, you're up.
Thank you, Chairman. We appreciate being here. First, I'd like to introduce, I have Kevin Lindsay with our Facility Superintendent, Paige Cruz is our Parks and Recreation Superintendent, and Brian Walker, who is our Urban Forestry Superintendent. These women and men really do the day-to-day operations and oversee those operations in our great park system, and so glad to have them here. And many of the requests and things that you'll see today is what they've brought to the table to be able to continue the quality of life that we're used to in Franklin as far as from a park standpoint in our system, but also of you'll see where the growth may come in the future. So as we get started, again, from an outline standpoint, we're going to look at basically our mission. We're going to look at some organizational charts in this presentation. You'll see not only our existing organizational chart, but we will show what a proposed organizational chart may look like over several years. We'll look at the base budget request from personnel, operation, capital. We'll look at the program enhancements, and at the end, we'd also like, as my fellow colleagues have done from public safety, we'll look at what the future may look like. Ours will look a little different from what theirs is we're going to look at some master plans that the board has been considering through the CIP process, and what we believe how we will adjust our operations to what may come through with that process. So from a mission from the Parks Department, and the Franklin Parks Department is an essential service established to improve the quality of life for all residents of the city by proactively responding to changing demographics and emerging trends, while also maximizing all available resources to enhance each resident's health, promote economic vitality, and long-term sustainability now and for future generations. We went through a master planning process back in 2015 and redid our mission as well as our vision statement, and we really tried to hold true to that as we look through the different operations and the functions that we have within the department. And that really, for me, keeps you on track. And so we tried to really look at that. From the standpoint as far as the organizational chart, I think we might be out of. In your packet, you have, forgive me, we've got a couple of different slides that have gotten out of difference. We had two different slides, and one was in your packet. What you're seeing is the existing organizational chart. What's on the slide is a proposed. What you have is where the 3 superintendents are in place. We have 43 full-time employees. You have 7 part-time employees, and that's what you have in front of you right now within your packet. What's on the screen right now, and I'll come back to that, is proposed organizational chart of where we're looking to add some additional staff and how that looks. I think it's important that not only for staff to see how an organizational chart looks and those functions, but also from a planning standpoint as we utilize that. Going into the base budget from personnel for fiscal year 2020, basically we're looking at a 1.3% increase from 2019 fiscal year at around $2 million. We also looking at an increase in our overtime. Regarding those, just as what fire and police has shared with you, we are in agreement, and a lot of times it's by our own fault that we help increase those special events. But our community's thriving, and they enjoy, that is part of the quality of life that we have here. A lot of times it's not just what we do, but the overtime comes into play that we have to work the events when it's not in-house sponsored events, as well as we also have an increase in our tournaments, which is our athletics, along with equestrian and events that we have, especially at Harlansdale, concerts and that type of thing. Within our current staffing, again, we have 43 full-time. We have 1 part-time employee, which is in our urban forestry division and our tree crew. We have 4 seasonal employees that work with our facility crews and basically work those weekends and different events throughout. And then we also house an intern from a local college, and we've been very successful with that program. When an intern walks through our door, it's not to just stay in administration, but they are actually in the field and get a feel for throughout the entire department to get an overall scope of what we do. From a base budget standpoint, the operations is around $2.1 million, which is an increase of 6.3%. The reason for this is last year you all were gracious enough to approve, even though it was not our first priority, is we would like to keep things in-house, but sometimes you can't. And so we had to actually, a mowing contract that mows some of our grounds and our common spaces, that is around $150,000, but so we were able to indulge absorb some of that within our main budget, but that is the main increase because of that. As for this particular budget, we are not requesting any capital within the general fund this year. From a program enhancement standpoint, we have 15 program enhancements, and you'll hear shortly from the superintendents that they'll be able to share some of the information about what you'll see. We have 5 personnel requests, 1 facility renovation request. We have 8 equipment requests, which I will ask a special guest to come up. If she's still in the room, and she is our planning director. We are jointly working on a project together from one of our commissions that we have liaisons to, and we also have a vehicle. There are 3 vehicles within our overall budget, and I think it's important to share is some of them are tied to personnel. So if the personnel is not included, then the vehicle's not included as far as the program enhancements. Personnel-wise, we are looking at 5 new requests. Many years ago, and those that have been with the city as far as our elected officials, remember Sam Overstreet. He was my assistant director when I came on board almost 17 years ago. And Mr. Overstreet has now passed on, but left a wonderful legacy. But that was the last time, it's been close to over 10 years ago that we had an assistant director. As the department, our size and as the growth and the different areas in which we're involved in, it's important that I see the need to allow to request an assistant director. Soon we'll be over 1,000 acres of parkland within our community, which is wonderful. But we also have a need in the growth to balance to make sure that we're paying attention to personnel and operations, and that's real important. The other is a reclassification as an athletic turf and field supervisor. When we did the reclassifications last year with HR, one of the recommendations was to take a crew chief because of the existing job description we have. They oversee all of the athletic fields. They oversee capital improvements to those areas. We also compete, and you've heard this before, but when we deal with athletics and those that are that maintain our athletic fields as well as even the equestrian, we compete with not parks and recreation departments around the region. Even though that is some, we compete with the Titans, the Sounds, and those type of quality programs to keep quality staff. And so one of the recommendations from HR was to take an existing crew chief position and make that an athletic turf and field supervisor, and that's more within the field of that area. The next is the new landscape crew chief. This is the only division in the department that lacks a frontline supervisor. We see that there is a need to add that. We see that from personnel standpoint of having a frontline supervisor in the field makes a big difference when you're working in those divisions. The following is a maintenance worker. We're talking about more of the reason we're adding an additional would be because of the load in which we have. On the screen, it talks about trails and bridges, and so a lot of people don't realize we have 22 pedestrian bridges within our park system. We have over 10 miles of hard surface or natural trail systems, and soon we'll have mountain biking trails. Someone has to touch those things, including even 2 tunnels. Someone has to touch those at all point in time, and we've done a great job, but it's becoming a little overwhelming for our maintenance division to keep up, and so we're looking to be able to designate those specific things to that particular person. We also have a part-time landscaping worker that is, we have a 3-man crew currently, and to be able to continue to work with the current workload, this person will work 3 days a week. You will see in the future of this presentation that you're going to see some half people, and we're not just hiring half, but what that means is that that would be great, though, if we could only hire half. I know it, exactly. But you will see it to where the job right now may not account for a full-time, and so we're looking at a part-time person. Seasonal is a little bit awkward for us in the fact that it's only seasonal. And being able to do the pruning and doing the work that we do in the park system on the landscaping side throughout our park system, the winter growth and pruning and then planning for future, you'll see to where another half, so we'll be adding as a full-time people in the future. So again, the proposed, and this came up again, is this is what, with adding those positions that we've talked about, there you do see that there's a financial, it's just a temporary overfill, that we are doing some special projects within our department, and so we have an overfill position that we currently have that's there. But if you add the assistant parks director, you can see how the superintendents fall into place. There's additional staffing, and this really is where the operations take form. So that would be the proposed. So from a facility program enhancement, we do have Eastern Flank. Kevin, would you like to just quickly kind of share what this project's about?
Sure. This is Eastern Flank Battlefield. This is one of our premier rental facilities that we have within our Parks Department. And as you know, it's a refurbished golf clubhouse. I think the city spent their money very well in capturing that, keeping that structure, but now it's come time to the EFS, the drive-it that's on the outside of that building. On the right-hand side of your picture, it's got over 60 holes from where golf balls in the past broke through the EFS. That's just the ones that I could count. There are a lot more in other places, but it's starting to fail. It needs to be replaced, and really our main drive is to bring all the EFS or the drive-it off of that building and go back up with a cement hardy plank board, very similar to what the Fleming Center has on it. It would also help us remediate any other mold that may be within the drive-it system and the wall system. This building was kind of patched and put together, I think, over many years, I guess, and it's kind of, it's a range of what materials you have up under there. And as a rule, it just sucks in the water, and that's what we don't need that anymore. So we want to make sure that you know, going forward, this building is sound, secure, and hopefully remediate anything that may be in there. So we do have a company that's going to come in and core on the side just to let us know exactly what we've got on all 4 or 5 sides of that building. And that will kind of help us narrow down the price a little bit more. We've got an overall price that they give us, but I think we can narrow that down. It just depends on how much rot we have in the jambs under the windows due to the surface that you have on there currently.
All right.
You are certifying that those are golf ball holes and not Civil War bullet holes, right?
Didn't you play out there, Clyde?
You may have added to those, Mr. Chairman.
I'm hoping that's what they are. We haven't found any lead in there.
So the next one is a federal line markers project. This is from Planning and Parks, and Emily is in the room with us. But this came out of the basically the Civil War Commission that we have within the city. Formerly was known as the Battlefield Commission. And this is a project in where they want to place these throughout the town to show where those federal lines. It would be a project where streets or parks, depending on the location, we would look at right-of-way, we'd look at private easements, we would look at our own parkland to be able to place these. And so this would be, it's not a lot of money as far as this, but it is very much a very visual project within our community. And while Emily is here, and she's leaving.
Is my understanding there's been 10 roads that have been identified where we'd have a marker on each side of the road?
So give us an example, like.
So it's a small concrete monument. It's about 4 feet tall. And this project has been going on for about 3 to 4 years. It has been in previous planning budgets. But we have gotten held up with state approvals because 3 of the locations are along state right-of-way routes. And we have not necessarily had all the surveyed documents prepared in order to get those approvals. We've been working through some of that in the last year, and we're pretty much ready to go with them. We just need the formal approval at this point, but we have been working on it so long that it didn't get carried over into the last budget year. And in working with Lisa, it sounded like something that Parks could add into their budget, and that because the amount is relatively low, it would be something fairly manageable. But it has been an ongoing project to demarcate that federal line where the troops cross through Franklin. And there are 9 locations at this point. Some of those may change, as in if property owners aren't willing to work with us, some of those may be removed. But we did have agreement from all the property owners for the 9 locations about a year and a half ago, but because of the delays in the project, we still need to go back to some of them.
Or tourism, you know.
Thank you.
If I could just have other directors come up and do each slide, that'd be awesome. I know, right? It's nice to tag team. But no, we're happy to partner with another department to fulfill this request. The next 2 out of the 8 is of equipment is the wide area mower. And Brian, if you don't mind kind of sharing.
Sure. This is a 16-foot wide mower. It's a large area mower. It really the benefits that it provides for us is it replaces 3 60-inch zero-turn mowers, and so not only does it replace a little bit of equipment, but it also reduces the need to hire personnel. So it offsets the 2 people additional that we would need to operate. And so even though it's a bit of an expensive mower, those expenses are offset pretty quickly in not having to pay additional staff to operate equipment.
And we currently have one of these in the department. We've used it for years, and and we use it at multiple parks.
Correct.
So you're needing to replace that one, or you want to add a?
We're replacing.
Replacing.
Our current mower is about 8 years old, and that's pretty significant for a
I
mower.
would think so.
Yes.
1,000 acres of parkland, yes.
Even with what it mows, it's been used, that's for sure. So the next one is a trimming mower, and I believe this came out of athletics.
This is a new mower. We currently have one, but we want to keep the one we have, and this one is, we're proposing to use this at Liberty Park. We currently use zero turns, so obviously this mower is more what golf courses, which a lot of them use real mowers, but this is the rotary version of a golf course, so it gives it that cut, that defined cut that we want for a baseball field. So this way we don't have to transport any more of the zero turns, and it gives us that cut that we have at Jim Warren. So this mower is more difficult to transport, so we don't often. So this would put a new one, additional one in our fleet, and it would be stored at Liberty.
I'll let you keep going.
Mm-hmm.
It's a top dresser.
All right, this also is a new piece. We do have a top dresser that is existing, but have been informed that they are no longer making that. So therefore, it's hard to get parts for it. We have been encouraged to keep it probably because we won't get that much for it. So we're proposing this new one, and obviously we want to get by with that one before something happens to it. And we spend anywhere between $15,000 and $20,000 a year on top dressing, and that's for all irrigated fields. I mean, we have 50 acres around about athletic field surfaces, but not all of that is irrigated. So everything that's irrigated, we top dress. So this is what that would be used for. So just a different kind of top dresser with the Toro. It comes together. You can take that off if needed. So
any baseball outfields or anything like that, you'd
yes.
use that?
Infield or outfield. And this one, since it's smaller, would be an asset to be able to use it on the infield versus taking a big tractor. So this is much smaller, but you can use it for either or.
A lot of people don't realize, but we even top dress at Harlansdale, where you have the equestrian trails, or as people run those edges, and you have moles and that type of thing. It's just a natural area, but in order to help make that smooth, so it does require those kind of things. This is a replacement of a compact utility tractor.
And this one, we currently have a small 770 that you'll see to the left. We're proposing the new piece is to the right. The biggest difference is it's newer. It's a little bit more horsepower. And obviously the one to the left is pretty aged. It's somewhere between, we think between 1992 and 95, as you see. So it's pretty old. It's one of the oldest pieces that we still have left. So a lot of hours. It's used a lot for aerating. It can also be used, we've got a laser grate on it, using it today for a project on the field. So we're playing a little bit with time on it because it is pretty old. So we're just proposing just a newer upgraded model to replace that one.
So what
Soon we
si-
like to use this as art at Harlansdale, just
So
art.
what size are you going to for the new one, do you know?
What's, sorry?
It's the size we're going to.
I don't know what I just know this one that is proposed in here has got more horsepower. It's similar, but it's probably at least a size up, but horsepower-wise, it is got more horsepower, so you can do a little bit more than we're doing with it.
Because the 770 won't, I mean, it may do
Yeah,
what you need
it's
to
small.
do, but it doesn't do, it
It's
won't do a lot.
It aerates and well, I mean, we do some small stuff with it. We like it because of the size. If you're gonna put it on an infield versus a big tractor, so you don't do as much damage if you are doing some work. But we laser grade a lot more now, our fields, so this would be used, it could be used for that as well, so.
So the next one, 6 out of 8, is the turf vacuum.
And this one, as you see in this picture to the left, was actually one of the first pieces I bought when I was here. It is just basically old. It's been worked on quite a bit by Fleet, and it's a pretty simple model. The one to the right does a lot more. It's a lot larger, so you can pick up more. Basically, the one we have just doesn't work efficiently anymore. So this is just a newer, upgraded model to the right that we do also as part of top dressing. This is part of that program we use. So right before the top dressing, we verticut, and once we get all that thatch, this is the way we pick up that thatch off the field. So you have to have a way to get it up, and this is what we use.
I'm gonna let Paige continue.
Get you some water, things.
This is a new, probably a favorite of mine and John's. With this piece, we recently had one of our fields done at Jim Warren with this. And it is basically, there's different brands. This is called a top maker, heavy-duty field top maker. There's probably 2 or 3 others that are similar to it. But this one is, for terminology, I guess a lot of people call it phrase mowing. It's been around probably since the early 90s, but it's really, I would say, popular right now. People do different things with it. It's similar, I guess, a more aggressive way of verticutting a field. Also a good way to level a field or get the grade issues corrected. If you have baselines that maybe your grass is up here and your baseline is here, and Mr. Stuckey knows what I'm talking about because he's played on one of those fields. Basically, you can cut this out and get it more level. You can take your lips out. This does a lot of it for you. You also have to pull this behind basically a tractor, and you have to have a dump trailer to dump this thatch because it basically takes soil out, and it'll take that next level out. Anywhere from probably a 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch it'll take off that field. It's a little scary to watch. I have a video of Jim Warren being done, pretty impressive, but a little scary, but it takes about 30 days for that to germinate and come back. It's the healthy way to do it. And a cheaper way. It's just a different way of looking at field renovations. Not saying we will never have to go outside for field renovations, because we will, but this is a quick way we could do it in-house with equipment we already have, except for this piece, because we already have a tractor, a dump trailer, and a workman to use. So just a different effect that you get on that, so it can be some cost savings with that.
We had on the next slide, we had a duplication of pictures. What's on the slide, though, is actually what we're proposing. You had a duplication of the last tractor we had within your packet. So if you'll look at the screen, and I think, is this yours, Paige?
Yeah,
or
this
Brian?
is.
Okay.
If you'll look to the left, the existing is currently the tractor we have. It does have new turf tires on it because we're getting by with this one right now. We're using this one today as we speak too, on putting out some clay on the field. The one to the right is again just a newer version that can be used not only by athletics, but it could be used for grounds or different division. But this tractor again just has a lot of hours on it and age, and we had looked at doing this last year but decided to do it this year, but it's kind of, the time is up. So that's kind of why we're looking at that. Just so we could, again, it ties into a lot of those field renovations that we do every day.
So a lot of times you'll hear where one superintendent may talk about, but we understand, as small as we are as a department, even though we can be more of a mid-sized department as well, we share equipment. So if there's ever a time in which we need to do some type of renovation, whether it's through the maintenance, through Kevin's divisions, Brian, or Pages, just because we may say that it's out of athletics and that might be the majority of the use, it is parks. And so we utilize it across the board. So that's real important because we, as much as we do, we have to share. So the The last one is basically, we have a pickup truck. I didn't have a picture of a pickup truck. I know that's disappointing.
Might have
I
seen
know,
that.
try to, but this is for our urban forestry division where, it's a replacement, that we have within, that division. And Brian, you just want to quickly share?
Sure, our current truck that we use is 2002. It's a little over 100, I think about a little over 150,000 miles are on it. And this is a replacement for that vehicle. That pickup truck is primarily used as a chase vehicle behind our bucket truck to help transport staff, and then when needed, it also tows other equipment. So it's just really just your basic pickup truck is what we're looking for.
Thank you. So that kind of concludes our program enhancements. And so I'd like to take the next few minutes to talk about future. And even though Mr. Stuckey had mentioned about looking at about we're looking at about an 8-year process for us. Again, this all hinges on what is approved by you all through the CIP, but it's important to kind of understand where we believe operations need to take place, equipment, and what we're looking at is doing a full assessment in the department over this next year to take a look at for the next 10 years of where growth will take place. And plus it's important what you're about to see is when a facility such as like a Harlansdale or so, it depends on the project and how much is approved. So a lot of our projects are completed in phasing. And the first one would be is Bicentennial Park. You're looking at, as you know, that we already currently have the Point Park at this location. But once the pavilion and the grounds and that type of thing, here comes an event facility added to the park system. So we're looking at programming. There's landscaping that would be involved. There's facilities. Here comes it touches each of these areas in which we've talked about today, because you're going to have trash cans. You've got to make sure that it's clean, but you also have got to make sure the grounds are taken care of. So here comes walking through the door from the equipment from each of those areas. And again, it just kind of gives you an outlook of if once Bicentennial, whether we do a smaller portion of, but as that large part comes on board in our downtown area, it'll be important to add personnel. And as you see some of these half and things that we talked about, that's when we would include it as two halves would make a whole throughout the park system where we are. The future growth is the Southeast Complex in Robertson Lake. This is currently within our capital improvement plan. We're looking at to do phase 1, which would include 5 football fields. I'm just going to say athletic fields. Let's just clear it up, athletic fields. Inclusive playground infrastructure, but there's a lot of, even though we may not do every amenity that's on a concept plan, you still need to maintain. But as this area develops, this is 233 acres, so this is larger than Harlansdale. So once you were to complete the entire complex, which would include the Robertson Lake area, that's when you see from personnel standpoint of what we would need to function, as well as equipment in all divisions. And what we've been doing over the last about a year and a half since we've been talking about this park is we've been looking within each division of really what is it that will be needed to maintain. And that'll be important. The goal is that we have enough of the complexes like a Jim Warren, a Liberty, a Southeast, that we're not transporting equipment anymore across town. Liberty Park is your next one. Parkland impact fees most likely will play a part in this, the phase 2 of this park. This is an 85-acre park, and once it's complete, we already are on site at this park in the baseball fields and our maintenance and the dog park. But once you finish this, we're looking at the programming, the landscaping, and the different personnel that's included in those. But we do foresee that Liberty Park most likely would be approved maybe within the next 2 to 3 years. Hopefully next year, but I'm not saying that out loud. So, Harlansdale, you just approved a master plan to take a look at some of those facilities, and hopefully as that plan is developed, then you bring on personnel that would maintain those areas. And so if the main barn or landscaping goes in, that's when you bring on the events continue to grow. And we're going to have to really take a look internally as how is that balance of making sure that there's not an event every single weekend at Harlansdale, and that it still is a passive park for those that want to utilize it. But again, that plan itself was a very large plan, and we'll have to, the bridge and the trail system would be one of those areas that would come into play there. Some of the areas that we don't talk about as much regarding some of these plans, the first one that you have in the left-hand corner is one that's going to be coming through the Planning Commission. It's not been to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen yet, but it's important to talk about because it's something that may be proposed and most likely would be in the future. Parkland Impact Ordinance impact fees play a huge part in the operations now within the department, because if you're going to take something on, if it's larger than 5 acres, here comes the Parks Department to make a recommendation. Should we or should we not take care of it? And it's important that we have good agreements in place. But the first one is Huffines, it's Huffines Ridge, right? Thank you. This was the former homestead of the Carruthers family. It would have a facility, a historical structure on it, an arboretum, but this is over 10 acres of hillside that we would expand in the program. In the bottom left, in this one, this is where this particular park would be right in here. And so you can see in that bottom depicts the mountain biking trail system that we are currently working on, that to take the hillsides and be able to add a recreational amenity to it. Again, someone does have to touch, even though we're in some of the contracts with our mountain biking, that we have a 15-year agreement that someone else will maintain. But it's important to see the big picture with those. The one to the far, I guess that's the far right, that is basically Riser Point, but one that you'll be seeing soon is the fields at Reese Farm. It has been requested of Parkland impact fees for a Greenway trail system. But through this, if I may go to the wall again, this is the future Matt Catcher Parkway through here. And so through the Parkland impact fees, the old ordinance, we were able to obtain a easement through Riser Point development. That trail system is not built, but it would be eligible for future Parkland impact fees in this quadrant, should we see that, the need to do that in the future, which we do as a department. But the fields at Reese Farms will be recommending that they go ahead and build their section of trail system. We are recommending that we would not take over this until it made the connection to the multipurpose trail system on Matt Catcher. So there's going to be several years, and that's where balancing where we need to go as far as personnel and how we maintain these areas is very important. And so that gives you just a little bit of a look. There's a lot of property. There's a lot of excitement that we see within our community, and we appreciate your time and letting us come before you to share. And we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
So I guess the Parkland impact fees, those dollars can only be used for capital. They can't be used for operating expenses.
Yeah,
So you
development
kinda-
of the park
And
itself.
specifically in a,
quadrant.
Right,
kind of in a
right,
quadrant,
right.
yeah, I was gonna say.
We have a portion that we did for the
Yeah,
community,
can't
community
set up a-
facilities, but then the remainder we need to do from by quadrant.
Correct.
And those cannot be used in a historic park. So they're all outside of historic parks.
So no personnel endowment. We can't set that
No,
up.
no,
Okay.
unfortunately not. Unfortunately not.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Chairman.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor's got a question.
Yes.
See, you said no capital request in 2020, but you have all this equipment in there. What am I missing? Am I just not understanding?
Well,
The-
we normally, from a base budget standpoint, we normally don't put that in the presentation. And what is decided as from the department standpoint, administration will take a look at all of the departments, the general request, and then it will come back. Because we're unsure if it will come out of a specific line item, whether it's a facilities tax, a hotel motel
She didn't have any identified in the
But no
base budget.
identified in the base budget.
But if we approve some of those that you saw, those would fall into the operating capital category, especially the equipment.
Yes. So it depends on the prioritization. Thank you for asking that. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Lisa.
Thank
you
you.
guys. Appreciate that.
Thank you, guys.
Do I click?
Item 9, budget presentation, sanitation and environmental services.
You got the puck? I have the puck. It's flashing.
We ready? Ready to roll?
Mark, you're up. Okay.
He's technical support.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you all for your time and the opportunity to present our 2020 fiscal year budget. At least give you a good snapshot of it anyway. Before we dig into it too deep, I want to take this time to recognize our staff, our team that are out there every day. Through rain, sleet, or snow, high winds, doesn't matter. Our job don't wait for tomorrow, and I thank them every day for what they do, and I think that's very important. We don't consider ourselves in our administrative staff as managers. We consider ourselves coaches, and if you've ever read a book from a prominent successful head coach of a collegiate or professional team, 3 things seem to stand out. There's basically, and I narrowed all my readings down into 3 phases. And the first phase is meticulous planning. You have to have meticulous planning. The second phase is approval of that plan by whatever sources you're working with for approval, and a buy-in. And then the last but most important piece of that plan is the implementation of the plan by the folks that are actually going to have to do the work or play the game. And our team has bought into our plan. They do a fantastic job, and I just wanted to take that minute to recognize them. Of course, the purpose of our sanitation department is directly related to quality of life for residents, businesses, visitors in our community, and an environmental responsibility for safe, efficient practices while being good stewards of our resources. And of course, to continue providing current services, focusing on increased efficiencies in all divisions of the department. And with this in mind, you will later hear about proposed program modifications that go in line with continuing our current level of services. Organization chart it's unchanged from last year. We have, I believe, 45 FTEs, full-time positions. The base budget request in 2018 was $3.3 million. This year we're looking at $3.2 million. Our base budget request for operations in 2018 was $5.7 million. In 2019, it has come out to, $5.4 million. And part of that decrease was because of the Route Smart Navigator, which was a one-time cost, which we actually implemented last week and are looking forward to showing that off soon.
If I may,
Yeah.
so
projections this year in terms of where we are relative to revenues. We're tracking really well. We do not expect that there'll be a required transfer of funds from the general fund for the sanitation. So we budgeted that way for FY19, and it looks like we're going to hit it. So.
In fact, it looks like the fund will see an increase in its fund balance through for the.
I didn't want to brag too much. I was afraid I'd
It
jinx
appears
it.
that way
I
at
didn't want
this
to jinx it.
juncture, let's
I
put
didn't
it
want
that
to
way.
jinx it, but I feel pretty confident. That's what will happen this year.
Sorry if I jinxed it.
This year, we're asking for a total of 9 program enhancements, 8 equipment program enhancements, requests totaling $1.483 million, and 1 operational program enhancement request at $488,000. And you'll notice we don't have any personnel enhancement requests. We're only requesting equipment and operational changes to allow us to maintain our current level of service and maintain a high level of service to our core customers who are our residents and our downtown core businesses. The program enhancements for equipment break out as follows. We desperately need to replace 3 automated side loaders at a cost of a little over $1 million. We need to replace 1 knuckle boom at a cost of $190,000. We need to add a knuckle boom, and we've got some other material that further goes into a lot of detail on this that'll come out later in this meeting and upcoming.
Actually, when he's talking about replacing this equipment, and with the side loaders is what you're looking at, we're talking 9, 8, and 7 years on these side loaders. They usually have a useful life of 5 years, stretching it to 7, and having at least 2 years of backup responsibility for that vehicle. So what we've done is kind of stretch the life of the side loader, so that's why we're asking for at least 3 new ones to kind of streamline our operations.
Good, correct, thank you. We need to add a knuckle boom because one of our changes is the way we collect yard waste. We've combined our yard waste, brown bags, and brush collection, and we're slowly phasing out this dual rear load trucks that pick up your brown bags on one side and ground trash on the other. We're phasing those out, and as we phase those out, we're replacing it with a different type vehicle that gives us more automation and better efficiency. We would like to replace our stationary pressure washer that gets used a lot. I think people notice that we do keep our equipment clean. In order to do that, we use the pressure washer, and it's seen its better days. It's ready to be replaced. We have a very old 20 or 30-year-old tow motor. I think we got used years ago that we use in our BOPA facility. It's very problematic, and it's time to look at replacing it. And we're adding 1 SUV for administrative staff because I now have an assistant director that we haven't had in a while, Mr. Nate Ridley, who I'm very proud of.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our program enhancement request, and this is one that we probably you have heard a lot more about in some of the previous work sessions, but we didn't make the cut and weren't able to give full benefit, but it will be elaborated on more in upcoming meetings, and Mark will touch a little bit on it as we get a little bit deeper into this presentation. But that will equate to $488,400 for the 2020 budget purpose, and that is for what we're calling a transition to automated curbside recycling. And now we'll dive into a little bit of our modified operations, which is a key component to all this. And Mark, I think, is going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so as Jack mentioned, Tuesday night, we were scheduled to be on the work session, so apologize that we were unable to do so. Part of this presentation, I think, is based on the assumption that you had some of this knowledge, so pardon me if I have to step back and explain a few things. So the modified operations are primarily related to automated curbside recycling, focusing our commercial service, and then transitioning to a more sustainable fleet. FY 2018, we spent about $150,000 on equipment replacement, if you recall, through the cost of service. We're targeting, based on the way we currently operate, at about $1.4 million per year, and that's based on anticipated life cycle, based on manufacturer and fleet recommendations, the amount of equipment we have, and then just depreciating is not the appropriate term, but looking at a replacement schedule over that life. So in 2020, for curbside recycling, Jack had mentioned we're looking at an expenditure of $488,400. That would include the purchase of 10,000 recycling carts, barcode readers, monies towards public education and outreach. We know this is going to be a substantial effort to do that transition and make it as clean as possible, and make sure our residents don't have any diminished level of service.
What a barcode reader for what?
So when we set out carts, and they're going to be setting out, we're anticipating 10,000 as the initial outlay. It's a huge time saving to be able to scan the code on the cart and automatically pull data back into and get imported into Infor. Otherwise, that timing takes a significant more amount of time to document it by hand, bringing that back into the office and then redocumenting. So you eliminate human error in using barcode readers, and it speeds up the process.
It will coincide with the Infor system, the city Infor system, where we keep our inventory of our carts. Basically, the addresses will be preloaded in the handheld, and it'll match the cart to the address.
So you just got a serial number or something on the cart.
Yes, sir.
Scan it in.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it'll be useful in municipal solid waste as well. So this is not just rollout of recycling, but ongoing
and it's
operations.
kind of it's a little baby step into the further technology of what we do, and it will give us at some point in the future, if we choose to go that path, the ability to put actual readers on the truck and be able to tell every time that cart was serviced and where it was serviced. But that's down the road.
Alderman Martin is.
Yes.
For the curbside recycling?
Not yet. No, we'll continue using our current trucks that pick up the blue bags because they have flippers. It's called semi-automated. They'll roll the cart to the back of the truck, and an automated flipper will flip it up, and will gradually, as those trucks are ready to be placed out of service and replaced, we'll replace them with fully automated. But these trucks are just for the trash trucks that are out on routes every day.
Just for the present time?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, again, Jack had mentioned the roughly $1.5 million for equipment replacement. And what we were intended on talking about Tuesday night is the way we're rolling this out, and we certainly need guidance from you all, is that we're making a lot of assumptions. Initial assumption is that this would be a voluntary program, the recycling program. So we would request that residents would register. When they get a cart delivered, we would charge an administrative setup fee to provide for the setting up the accounts, so on and so forth. This would also offset the cost of the cart purchase. So we look at that as kind of a pass-through cost. Right now, we anticipate the carts to cost about $40 each. we would set the administrative setup fee at $40. So we would anticipate, assuming you all want to go in this direction, revenue of about $400,000 that initial year.
And how big would they be?
Pardon me?
How big would they be?
Looking at least, 65
There's-
gallon cart.
In other words, the same, as big as what we have for our regular.
About 2/3 of what you have
About
for the roll, the regular rollout.
Let me tell you, we have more blue bag stuff than, by far, than we have in the black.
This is all part of the conversation we want to have with you
Okay,
all.
okay, I'm just
So,
saying,
yeah.
I'm just saying.
So we would continue, we would anticipate continuing a weekly service. We're gonna actually bring a cart in the next work session, a 65-gallon cart, so you can see it. It won't have anything in
Oh,
there.
well, let me ask, let me
I was
ask you.
thinking that Nate was gonna pop out
Pop
of it.
out of it?
Yeah.
We could do that.
You know, I've got a trash compactor in my kitchen from a long time ago.
Mhm.
Maybe I could compact the stuff down there.
Yeah. I guess you could.
I guess you could, and
You
make
certainly
it, make
could.
it work, okay.
And one thing, real quickly, when you talk about cart sizes, you've got 36, 48, 64, and then 96. We have to remember, we're still collecting weekly. I know in Nashville, they've just finally found some money to go to twice a month. And they've got
Twice a
one.
month? Oh, wait,
Yeah,
twice a-
they-
twice a
they-
week or
they-
twice a
It's
month?
been once a
For
month
recycling, yeah.
with a 96-gallon cart.
Gee.
So we're,
It's pretty unusual to have
yeah.
weekly recycling
To have
service.
Oh, weekly recycling?
Yes, ma'am.
if we weren't doing it
Oh, we
weekly, I
need
would
that,
be more
though.
inclined to a bigger cart, but since
We
we're
need
doing
that.
it weekly, I think for the average, we picked a good medium.
You know, to Ann's
say that.
comment, I don't go to all the neighborhoods to see recycling, but I don't see a lot of recycling. I see it at every house, but I don't see a lot of recycling that it would exceed 65 gallons.
Yeah.
Visualizing what
The bags you see
yeah,
sitting
was
out.
visualizing the bags that I see.
Yeah.
You get a
Generally,
lot
there's-
in there.
There's not more than a couple of bags, but you may have areas where they are, but,
We basically always have two
And
bags.
we had to take a little bit in consideration size constraints and people, maybe not having room for two big carts, but
Oh, I hadn't thought about that.
yeah. Yeah, but what we can't do is offer whatever size you order, we can
No.
bring it, because we tried that when we started in Nashville, and all we did was play musical carts. They started, well, we just want a 48. Oh, no, we want a 64. Oh, no, we need a 96. Well, no, you know, we just got to
No.
pick a size in a cart and say, this is
Well,
ours.
just bring one and let us look at it then.
Yeah, we'll
We'll
let you
bring it
see
in.
that.
So if you go smaller than a 64-gallon cart too, with the automation, you can be slinging carts and.
Yeah,
Oh,
if you
okay.
go
Don't
if you
do
go
that.
below 64, you risk losing a lot of carts.
you may recycle a cart.
Which I would assume they're recyclable, but I don't.
You might have flying carts.
Mhm.
But
So-
ultimately,
But go
you will
ahead,
be
go ahead.
using
Go
the
ahead.
side loaders for everything. So we're going to transition with the, continuing to use the rear loaders, but ultimately, we will be using the same equipment. So we're really simplifying our operation and automating the recycling side. It'll be less labor intensive, so we'll be able to stretch our staffing out as the community grows. So it makes a lot of sense. Plus, our processor, the blue bags are a major pain
that's
for the
gonna be-
processor
that's
too.
gonna be
So
main.
we're really touching on a lot of different elements and moving in this direction. It'll be an intensive process and educating everybody, but our citizens did a remarkable job of getting on board
They did
with
on
the
the
blue
blue
bag
bag.
when
They
we did
did.
it.
They
So
really
it'll
did.
really just be the second chapter of that. We always thought that when we did the blue bag that we would end up here with a permanent bin at some point, and we're really at that stage.
And we're trying to stay ahead of the curve of what is probably coming. The recycling market has changed with the commodities in China and all, and we're gonna have, it'll be a little bit more strict usage of what we can set out, but we'll be ahead of the curve and won't face some challenges a lot of cities are about to face, because we're gonna be ahead of that.
Will the carts be blue?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Good.
Oh,
Yes,
God.
ma'am. That'll help.
You go from blue bag to blue bin.
Yeah. Don't change colors on us.
Yeah, don't make go back. Get
Stay
it
loyal to our blue.
confused.
I think I've even heard the term Blue Ben Franklin.
Yeah.
Oh, that's bad. That's really
We're working through this. So really, the expenditure on the recycling transition, if you include anticipated revenues, assuming we go in that direction, is about $88,000 for FY 2020. One of the other elements we have spoken about previously is also focusing in our commercial service and moving away from the dumpsters. Those are, it's difficult for us to service those efficiently without charging a higher cost. I think if we actually set the rates to meet the cost of service, we would lose a lot of customers. So we would
Price
end up-
ourselves out of the market
we would
anyway.
so we would lose those customers one way or the other.
Because we don't service everything by
Right.
any means.
We don't have the volume in the dumpster world to.
And we can't
to
go
perform.
out advertising that service, because then you get into some issues with the major haulers.
So assuming we head in that direction, we anticipate we would have close to $700,000 in the sale of surplus equipment. So that's inclusive of split rear loaders, which Jack alluded to earlier. We have knuckle booms replacing those in the yard waste and ground trash side, and then elimination of some, don't worry Nate, not all, front-end loaders initially. We don't want to sell too much too fast. So that's what we're looking at for FY 2020. We obviously showed you the expenditure side. We also wanted to show you what we anticipate coming in terms of revenue for surplus equipment and administrative setup fees. So wanted to look at 2021, 2022, and 2023 as well. And we expect to have the recycling program kind of fully established by 2023 in terms of equipment. Again, you'll note you will not see any additions of personnel in these projections. 2021, still continuing down the path of a sustainable fleet. We would anticipate expenditures of about $1.7 million. As part of that, we have 2,000 recycling carts at $40 each, addition of a knuckle boom, replacing a knuckle boom, and replacing two rear end loaders with 2 automated side loaders. So those are the 2 recycling. So those would be the 2 recycling side loaders that we had talked about earlier. We have a container delivery truck that is lucky to be on the road, and we would also replace a municipal solid waste side loader as well. We would anticipate $80,000 administrative setup fees for the recycling component and about $130,000 in sale of surplus equipment. Now, these numbers in surplus equipment, Nate's tracked the sales of equipment over the years, and he has maxes, bins, and averages, and we're projecting as best as we can for the equipment that we currently have. 2022, we're looking at an expenditure of about $1.1 million, inclusive of, again, 2,000 carts. And I will say, trying to estimate how many carts we're going to need has been challenging. We have about 20,000-ish customers. We think we're going to have a lot of support in the beginning. It's very difficult to project, who's going to continue adding on. So I just want to make sure that it's clear that we're putting numbers in but they're at this point. We'll have a lot better information once we start the registration process and so on and so forth. And again, continuing on with sustainable fleet, replacing a mini packer, and again, 2 automated side loaders for solid waste. And then at that point, we'll have a knuckle boom that's coming out that we would project to be coming out of service. Revenues of $80,000 and about $100,000 in sale of surplus equipment. And then the last year that we've kind of worked through expenditures about $1.4 million. Again, 2,000 recycling carts, automated side loader, which would complete the recycling transition, at least based on projected numbers of customers. Replace a mini packer and replace a knuckle boom. So what we've done for the next 4 years is really try to project out what we would anticipate in expenditures in terms of equipment, stepping through this transition for both recycling and commercial. I will say that they do a great job of maintaining their equipment. This is again based on what we expect the life to be from manufacturers in our fleet department. But we're always going to strive to stretch the life of equipment assuming it doesn't hurt operations tremendously. So with that, I think, summary. You want to do the summary there, Jack? Or I can do it. I'll do it.
Yeah, I've just got one thing I'd
Yeah,
like to add. You know, I like to play with numbers sometimes, and I look back and in this past calendar year, 2018, we reached out and serviced over 2 million service points just in 2018. That means we had a truck in front of a customer 2 million times, well over 2 million times in 2018, picking up some form of waste. At our transfer station, we pushed and packed 3,600 some odd tractor trailers of solid waste for shipment. Well over 80,000 tons. That's just in 1 year. And if you ever want just a little quick snapshot, that's I mean, this stuff is out there every day. It's getting used. And we look forward to getting into a standardized replacement program that's sustaining and self-funding. We really look forward to getting to that point.
And I think the citizens see that. They see you all out there doing that. With your summary.
We get a lot of great feedback from
I was going to
from
say,
customers.
never hear anything but good stuff
Yeah.
about, really.
We do on occasion, but you know, we try to adjust and
They do a
make
great
things
job.
right. Yes. So as you know, we've worked through a cost of service analysis. We've talked about it in front of you a couple times. We're going to have another follow-up conversation, I think, at the next work session. A lot of thanks to Jack and his team for working through these, trying to think through how we're going to transition. We're trying to focus our efforts on our core customers, as Jack mentioned earlier, and have a fleet that we can rely on. FY 2020 budget allows for the department to work towards achieving these goals and recommendations of the cost of service, and look forward to any questions you may have.
I would just add, real quick on top of that, there's obviously more policy decisions that you all have to make. So we've made some baseline assumptions that Jack and Mark and the team have put together. I think they are well thought out, but we will need your direction. That's why we're continuing to present that to you. There are some choices about how we set out the recycling bin approach and how all that works. So, you know, we still need your direction, but we also are at budget time and we need to make at least some set of assumptions for them to build a budget around. So these conversations that are forthcoming will help us clarify. We can modify as we get your direction, but I think they've laid out a pretty thoughtful plan to focus our services, put us in a better position to handle especially the recycling component of residential service. And yeah, I think it will help us be in a good position to be even more sustainable over the long haul with the demands of growth as well. So.
Any questions?
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Item 10, monthly report.
I got some. Mike, don't take it personally.
Good afternoon. We got through the budget stuff.
For the monthly reports, there's not been a big change since last month, but I would like to maybe make 2 points about what's on the monthly reports. And the first being the local sales tax. We don't have it this month, but we will next. We'll have the sales tax for the December sales. And if you looked at the budget, it actually, we're anticipating a number of $4 million. And if you think about the magnitude of the local sales tax numbers, not only did November show as over 3 million, but even October's was 3 million. And prior to this, I can't remember any other month other than December ever being that amount. So it's actually, we're seeing the numbers increase. So that was the first point. Yes.
I just heard on TV today, though, that nationwide, the quarter ending in December was bad.
Yeah, it was down
because of
Over
markets.
1%
I know,
increase,
I
yeah.
know, yeah. But anyway,
year.
I'm
Yeah.
hoping ours is not.
Hopefully, we're in better shape.
Yeah. Well, I knew the early indications were hopefully it would be a good
That's right,
December.
but
Yes,
not.
exactly.
Sell, yeah,
Yeah.
on sales.
It didn't look like it around here.
Yeah.
But we may miss it.
And here's where our sales tax goes.
Yeah.
That's right, exactly, exactly. But anyway, I just, as I say, just heard that
yes,
this
The,
morning.
the second and last point is you probably noticed that we added a report to your screens this morning. And what that was the conference center report, because what Margaret Wilson in our office did, she took a schedule where we could not only show you the current year for the conference center, but also show you what the previous year was. So that was a new schedule we developed. So we're hoping each month to actually provide you that comparison. So we actually feel like this will be a good way to actually monitor some of the information for the conference center each month.
Thank you, that was a good idea.
Yeah.
Give Margaret a lot of credit. She sent us
Yeah.
a couple different drafts and took constructive comments from us, and we appreciate her leadership.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
So if you take this schedule, what you'll find is this December, there was actually a profit versus last year, there was a loss. So in essence, we actually had an increase of 53,000 from what we had the results of last year.
Interesting. Interesting.
And I guess I'll just make one comment, in addition to what Mike has said about the conference center. We, with the sale of the conference center, there is a different accounting system that Chartwell is using compared to the previous
Okay.
manager, Davidson, and we certainly are able to reconcile, but we are spending just a little bit more time just reconciling between just two different accounting systems. We are fortunate that Chartwell hired the former controller for the property back several months before the changeover, and he's been helping us with that process. So one of the things that in Margaret preparing the schedule, we've really been doing this kind of reconciliations since the change, just to make sure that we're in agreement. We're in agreement. So we appreciate your bearing with us a little bit during the transition, but I will report that the staff at Chartwell is working with us and being very helpful.
I'll add to that on a different angle. I met this morning with Ellie Westman Chen about various issues, but she made a specific comment to me about how engaged the Chartwell team is in building that business for the conference center, and that they're very focused on that. And they're so deep in this market that they really have an interest, and she just was really pleased to see how they're focused on driving business at the conference center, and really engaged in this market in particular. So that's encouraging as we go forward, I think, in terms of what they want to do to continue to build it and make it more beneficial to the community as well. So,
Yeah, I think having those relationships with the new leadership.
and they're locally rooted, so they are in, so that helps.
And they're very responsive. We, as staff, we can reach out to them, and they reach out to us, and there's good communication that's been going on ever since the sale.
Is that it?
That's it.
Any questions of Mike? Any questions of anyone else?
I would only note that your next Budget and Finance Committee meeting
Do need to, yeah.
is the 21st of March. It's a week later because we have finance staff out at the
Didn't want to mention.
the
that.
Finance
you for
Officers
saying that. I appreciate that.
Institute conference, getting some additional training experience that way. So we did bump it back, so you have an extra week. But the flip side of that is your April Budget and Finance will only be 3 weeks after that. So we will have a little extra break, but then we'll have two pretty close together between March and April. And of course, first part of May, you'll get the recommended budget from us. So, but just wanted to note that difference. But again, a 1 o'clock start.
1 o'clock,
Okay, on the 21st.
March 21st, right?
You got it.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Proper motion second, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned.